Hey everyone, I'm Josh Jackson, and if you're looking for a comprehensive WordPress tutorial that will teach you how to create highly customizable websites, you've come to the right place. In this video, you're going to learn how to use a free WordPress theme and a free page builder plugin to create world-class custom web designs. Even if you have no prior web design experience, this tutorial will take you step by step through the entire process, and you'll be able to create professional websites that are uniquely your own, not just another generic template. We'll start off by setting up a domain name and hosting account, and we'll quickly move to installing WordPress and going over basic WordPress settings. We'll then dive into practical methods for choosing a custom color scheme and creating a logo. You'll then learn how to use the Elementor page builder to customize 100% of the content between your website's header and footer. This means that you'll be able to create custom layouts with as many different sections and columns as you want. You'll be able to set up custom background colors, background images, and even background videos for all of your different sections. You'll also learn how to find free, high-quality stock photos that you can crop and resize to perfection. You'll learn about adding image galleries and videos to your site, creating custom buttons, and adding contact forms and Google Maps. You'll be able to set up custom icons with over 400 icons to choose from, and you'll be able to customize your fonts with over 600 Google font choices. You'll also learn how to use the optional blogging features that come included with WordPress. You can probably tell that this tutorial is incredibly comprehensive, and to be completely transparent with you, it is not for the timid. Even though the page builder we'll be using is drag and drop and requires no coding, there are still numerous complexities that are just unavoidable when it comes to having so many customization options. For that reason, I've added a clickable timestamp table of contents to the video description beneath this video on YouTube, so that you can easily navigate to different sections of the tutorial and watch some sections more than once. I've also created a free PDF companion guide that has a basic overview of the page builder. It also includes links to all of the images and video I'm using for the demo site, as well as all of the written content. This is there for you so you can easily follow along and replicate the examples that I show you on your own WordPress site. I believe the best way to learn anything is by doing, so if you're able to, I highly suggest using the demo content to recreate the examples on your own. There will be a link to the PDF guide in the video description, as well as affiliate links that I greatly appreciate you using. The last thing I want to say is that if you do find the video helpful, a fantastic way to say thanks is to take just a minute and like the video on YouTube, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Those things are hugely important for the success of my videos, and by doing them, you can play a part in letting YouTube know that my tutorials are helpful. Alright, enough with the introduction, let's just dive right into the tutorial. The first thing you'll need to do when creating a new website is register a domain name and sign up for a hosting account, which will basically allow you to house your website on the internet and make it available to the world. So for that, I highly recommend a company called HostGator. They've been in business for over 14 years. They have great customer service and excellent pricing. And personally, I've been a customer with HostGator for over 4 years, and I've been very satisfied with the service I've gotten. They also have an option for you to pay by the month, which makes it easier and cheaper to get started. Now, I am an affiliate for HostGator, which means if you do find my video tutorials helpful and you want to support me, you can use my affiliate link to purchase your hosting, and I'll receive a commission for referring you. So I'll leave my affiliate link in the video description, or you can just type in wpsculptor.com/HostGator. And thank you so much for doing that. It really is a great way to say thanks, and it's one of the ways I can gauge how helpful my tutorials are. So that's going to take you to the HostGator website. Then we'll go ahead and click on web hosting here at the top, and that will pull up 3 different hosting packages. The business plan has this private security feature and free phone service that most people probably don't need. The hatchling plan is going to be your cheapest option, and it's a great choice if you only need one website on your hosting account. If you have multiple websites, or if you plan on having multiple websites, the baby plan is a great option because you can have as many domains as you want, all hosted on one account for just a little bit more. So I'll choose the hatchling plan and click on sign up now. The next thing we need to do is register a domain name, and of course this is what your users will type into their browser to access your website. If you already have a domain registered with another company such as GoDaddy, you can click on this tab here, and then you would just type in your domain name and complete the rest of the hosting sign-up process, and HostGator will send you special instructions on how to link your domain name to your hosting account. To register a new domain, switch back to this tab and type in the domain that you want, and it will tell you if it's available. I'm going to type in Collective Dynamics, and then I'll choose the .com option. And you can see that this domain is currently not available, but it will also pull up a list of alternate domain extensions that are actually available, and you could choose one of those instead if you wanted to. For this domain, the .net extension isn't available, but oftentimes that would be a good option. If you really want a .com domain, you can get a little more creative and try a different domain name. So I'll try collectivegroupdynamics.com, and I'll click on .com again. And that one actually is available. So I'll make sure that it's checked, and then you have an option for domain privacy protection, and I'll let you read about that and decide if that's something you want. I'll just uncheck it for now. Then we'll scroll down and choose a plan. We're going to go with the hatchling plan, and you can see that the billing cycle is set to 36 months by default. By paying for 3 years up front, you can save a lot of money, and I'm actually going to show you how to get an even better deal with up to 50% off. So I'll just leave the billing cycle set to 36 months for now. Then type in a username and security PIN, and be sure to remember that. And then you're going to scroll down and enter your billing information, and you can pay with a credit card or you can pay with PayPal. Then scroll down and you can read about these additional services, or you can always add them later, and I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck them to get started as cheaply as possible. And then scroll down and notice that HostGator puts in this coupon code by default, and your hosting purchase for 36 months would be $142. But if you delete that coupon code and type in WP Sculptor 30, that's WP Sculptor 30, and click on Validate, and then we'll come back up and we need to uncheck this additional service again. And then you can see your hosting account is now 50% off at $125, which is a great deal if you can pay for 3 years up front. Now, I'm going to scroll up to the billing cycle and point out that you can still use the WP Sculptor 30 coupon code to pay for a shorter duration, and you can see that you still get a great deal, a great discount. But if you'd rather pay on a month-to-month basis, you can actually get the first month for just 1 cent by using a different coupon code. So you would just choose the 1 month billing cycle and then scroll down. And right now you can see that your first month would be about $6, but you can use the code WP Sculptor 1 cent and then click on Validate. And actually we need to scroll up and uncheck the additional service that adds on automatically. And now you can see that your domain name is $12.95 for an entire year. And then your first month of hosting is just 1 cent. And then, of course, you would be billed the $10.95 a month after that first month for as long as you wanted to keep your hosting account. So thank you again for using my affiliate link for your hosting purchase. And just know that by using the coupon codes, not only can you save additional money, it also ensures that HostGator knows that I referred you. So then you would just check that you've read and agree to the terms and policies and click on Checkout Now. All right, the next thing we need to do is install WordPress onto our hosting account. So give HostGator about 15 minutes or so and check your email. You should have an email with your basic account information. Go ahead and open that up and click on this link to your control panel. And that's going to open up in a new tab, and then we'll switch back to the email to get our username, and we'll copy this password. And be sure not to get any additional characters. And we'll go back and we'll log into our cPanel. And of course, I've changed my password, so I'll just type that in. And this is what the brand new cPanel looks like. If yours looks a little different, you may be using the older version, but you should still be able to scroll down, and we're looking for the software section. And then click on this quick install link. And then we want to click on WordPress. And then here you would select your domain. If you just set up a new hosting account with a new domain, you should only have one domain appearing here. But of course, I'm going to use a subdomain that I've already set up for this tutorial website, so I'll find that. But you would select your domain, and then you want to leave this section blank and click on Next. And then you're going to fill out this information, and we can always change this later for the blog title. I'll type in Collective Dynamics. And then just go ahead and fill out the rest of this information. And then leave this top box checked and go ahead and click on that you agreed to the terms of service, and then click on Install Now. After a couple of seconds, you should get this installation complete message, and you're going to get your username that you just filled out, and then you have this new password that was automatically generated, and this is the information that you're going to use to log into the back end of your WordPress site. So you definitely want to be sure and save that information. And then we need to usually allot a couple of hours, sometimes more, sometimes less, for a new domain name to propagate. And this is just part of the process. It has nothing to do with HostGator. It can depend on things like your physical location or sometimes your internet service provider. So we'll give it a couple of hours and we'll check back and we should be ready to work on our site. All right, after a couple of hours, we can check to see if our site's ready to go. So to do that, you'll open a new tab and just type in your domain name. So for me, that's tutorial.quickwebsitecreation.com. And when you can go to your site and you get something that looks like this is the coming soon page that comes with a new WordPress HostGator installation. You may also get something that looks like this. And either way, your site is ready to go. So to log into the back end of your WordPress site, you're just going to type in your domain and then /wp-admin. And this is going to pull up the login screen. And we're going to go back and we're going to copy our password and you'll use the same username. So I'll type in the username and paste in that password and click on login. All right, and this is what the back end of your WordPress site looks like. And this is where all of your changes and customizations are going to be made. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this message. And I'm going to say I don't need help. So I'll just click on that. All right, you can see here that you've got a message that says your site is currently displaying a coming soon page, and I'm just going to click here to deactivate that coming soon page. If you do want to use a coming soon page, I highly recommend one called Coming Soon Page in Maintenance Mode by SeedProd. And I've got a very short video tutorial I'll leave a link to in the video description. So first we're going to go over a couple of things that are very basic and we'll get those out of the way so we can get into the more exciting aspects of creating a website. So first there's the admin bar here at the top. And you can click on your site title in the upper left of the admin bar, and that's going to toggle back and forth between the front end of your site. This is what your site would look like for people that visit your domain name. And this is the default WordPress 2016 theme that comes when you install WordPress. And of course, we're going to change this completely. And then we can click on our site title again to toggle back to the back end. And what I like to do is hover over the site title in the admin bar and control click or right click if you're using a PC and open that link in a new tab. And this way I have two tabs open and I can switch back and forth that way. And another thing that I want to point out about the admin bar, we'll go back to the front end. The admin bar is only going to show up on your computer screen when you're logged in to the back end. So you don't have to worry about this appearing for your visitors. And then the other thing, I'll switch back to the back end. The other thing I want to point out is to log out of your WordPress back end, you would hover over your username on the right part of the admin bar and click on log out. And once we do that, I'm going to switch back to the front end and refresh the page. And I just want to show you that the admin bar, of course, disappears because we're not logged in anymore. So we'll go back and we'll log back in using our credentials. And I'll paste in the password. And remember, be sure and save that password that you got when you installed WordPress because you will have to have that. And go ahead and click on login. Now, the next thing I want to do is show you how to change your password. So to do that, you're going to log in with your credentials and go hover over users in the left here and click on all users. And then hover over your username and click on it. And then scroll down. And at the bottom, you have this generate password button. So with new versions of WordPress, you can't actually create your own custom password. And they do this for very good reasons, for security reasons. But you could generate a new automatically generated password. And then, of course, you would want to save that one somewhere where you have it safe and you can continue to refer back to it. And then if you did decide to do that, you would update the profile here by clicking there. The next thing we need to do is adjust our permalink settings. So to do that, hover over settings here and click on permalinks. And your permalink settings are going to control the URL link structure for your new pages and blog posts that you create on your site. So for example, if you created a page called About Us, you want to be able to access that page by going to your domain /About Us. So you want to keep it simple and straightforward like that and that's also good for search engine optimization purposes. So to do that, we need to switch that from the custom structure to the post name structure. And then we need to scroll down and click on Save Changes. And one more basic thing we're going to take care of is deactivating a couple of plugins that we're not using. And just as a general rule, it's a good idea to deactivate any plugins that you're not using because that can help speed up your site. So to do that, we're going to come over here on the left, hover over plugins, and click on installed plugins. And we'll scroll down and we have this Mojo Marketplace plugin activated. We're just going to click on deactivate. And we'll do the same with this opt-in monster plugin. Click on deactivate. The next thing we're going to do is install the free version of the GeneratePress theme that we'll be using. And this is a great theme to use for multiple reasons. It's incredibly easy and simple to set up. It also has excellent ratings on WordPress.org. That's something I always look for. And it integrates perfectly with the Elementor Page Builder plugin. So to install GeneratePress, we're going to come over here, hover over Appearance, and click on Themes. And we want to browse through the WordPress.org directory, so we're going to click on Add New. And then come over here to the right in the search box and type in GeneratePress. And this theme on the far left is the one we want, so we can hover over it and click on Install. And then after that installs, we can hover over the blue button and click on Activate. And now our theme is active, so we can view the front end of our site, and we'll refresh the page. And notice that we now have a completely different look and feel. And of course, we will be customizing our site completely as we go throughout the rest of the tutorial. The next thing we're going to discuss is coming up with a custom color scheme. And this is a fairly subjective topic, and you'll probably have to go through a trial and error process to figure out what works best for you. But I do have a couple of practical suggestions that you can follow to generate color scheme ideas. First of all, I recommend a tool called Colorzilla, and I'm going to open a new tab. And you can get this tool for the Firefox or Chrome browsers by going to colorzilla.com and then click on the first box here. And then you would download the tool by clicking the blue button. And once you install the tool onto your browser, you can click on this eyedropper icon and click Pick Color from Page. And now anywhere I move my cursor, it's going to give me what's called a 6-digit hex code that corresponds to that exact color. So right now, my cursor's hovered over this gray area, and you can see at the top center of my screen, I've got pound EA, 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 and that corresponds to that light gray shade. So we can use these hex codes on our website to create our own custom color schemes. And just to give you one more example, if I hover over the color wheel, you can see I get all these different shades. And right now, this green shade is pound F6FF66. So what I would suggest doing is use the Colorzilla tool to examine some of your favorite websites, maybe some brands that you really like, some sports teams, or even universities have good color schemes that you can borrow from. And it's worth noting that you can't really copyright a color scheme, so feel free to borrow any color combination that you like. And just to give you an example of this, I'm going to exit out. And I'm going to open a new tab and go to my website, wpsculptor.com. And then I'll activate the Colorzilla tool again, pick color from page, and then I'll put the cursor over this orange logo here. And you can see the hex code is pound FF5200. Now, if I didn't want to use the exact code, if I wanted to change the color slightly so that it was uniquely my own, I could click on it. And that's going to copy it. And then I can click on the Colorzilla icon. And now I can click on this color picker option. And you can see the hex code here, FF5200. But I can come up here right next to the color and just click to get a different hex code. And it's very close to the same color. So that would be an option you could use to come up with unique colors. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on cancel. I want to point out a couple more things. I'll just click on that to minimize that. So notice that I've got a white background here with darker text. And if I scroll down, I've got the dark background with lighter text. So it's very important for your text to be legible. You need to have light text on darker backgrounds and vice versa. Another thing I want to point out is notice how I'm using these neutral colors. My header is this very dark gray, almost a black, and then I've got a white background throughout my site, and then I've even got this lighter gray background here. And neutral colors are great to use because they're going to work in conjunction with a lot of different color schemes. They're going to work really well. They're not going to conflict. So if we look back at our website, notice that our header is white and our navigation menu is this gray color. And with the free version of the GeneratePress theme, we can't change our header or navigation colors, but this is okay because as they are neutral, they're going to go well with just about anything. The other color resource I want to talk about, and the one we're going to use, is a website called colorlovers.com. So I'm just going to open that up in a new tab, and that's color spelled C-O-L-O-U-R. And then hover over Browse and click on Palettes. And you can literally browse through hundreds of thousands of color palettes that other designers and creators have come up with. And there's also a search feature on the upper right, and I've already found a color palette called Flat. And I'm just going to type that in and search for it. Then I'll scroll down. It's going to be this third one down, and I'm going to click on it to open it up. And I really liked the blue, the green, and this orange shade on the far right. I felt like those go really well together. And I also felt like they were going to be vibrant enough to work really well on both light backgrounds and dark backgrounds. So if I scroll down, notice that each shade is listed again, and there's a hex code for each different color. So this is going to be great for making it really easy to add these colors to our website. So now that we've got our custom color palette selected, we're going to create our logo real quickly. So I'm going to open a new tab, and we'll be using an application called PicMonkey. So I'll type that in, picmonkey.com, and hover over this design tab and come down and choose this custom size. And we're going to type in 350 by 70. And the reason I'm using this dimension is because this is what the GeneratePress theme actually tells us is the optimal dimension for our logo. And I'll point that out when we upload our logo. I'll point that out where the GeneratePress theme tells us that. But just trust me for now, and we're going to go ahead and click on Make It. And that's going to create our canvas. And to add our text, we're going to come over here on the left and click on the text icon. And then click on Add Text, and that's going to add a text box. Then I can click, hold, and drag the text box over, and I can click, hold, and drag this corner to make that box a little bit larger. And I'll click inside and type in our first word for our logo, which is going to be collective. And then I'll double click to select the text, and I'm going to come down and find the font that I want to use. It's going to be this Lato font, so I'm going to select that. And then with the text still selected, I'm going to come over and highlight the font size that's currently 30 and type in 43, press enter. And then I'll click off the text and I'll click, hold, and drag to center that. And then to add the second word of our text, we're going to click on Add Text again, and that'll make another text box. I'll click, hold, and drag that. And then I'll click, hold, and drag the corner again to make it larger and click inside the box and type in Dynamics. And then I'll select that text, and I'm going to choose a different font. I'm going to find one called Francois 1 and select that. And then with that still selected, I'm going to come back to the size, select what's there, and type in 43 again, press enter. And then I'll click off. And it looks like I need to move the text a little bit so that it fits on the canvas. So I'll click, hold, and drag that over. And I just want to make sure that collective and dynamics align across the horizon because we will be cropping this, and that looks pretty good. Now to change the color, first I'll start with collective. I'm going to select that, and we could go back to our color palette, and you could certainly use any color from the color palette, would go well together. But I actually want to use a color from our website currently, and I want it to make that first word the same color as our navigation menu. So I'm going to use the ColorZilla tool and click Pick Color from Page and hover over the navigation menu, and you can see the hex code is pound, and then there are 6 2s. So I'm going to click on that to copy that. And if I go back to my PicMonkey screen, I've still got this text box selected. So I'm going to come over to the color and select what's there and paste in the 6 2s and press enter. And that change is going to take effect. It's very subtle because it was already dark text. And then for the dynamics, I'm going to click on that and go to our color palette, and I'm going to make this the orange that we're going to use. So I'm going to select the hex code and copy that and come back, and we're going to select the hex code here and replace it by pasting in the new one and press enter. And you can see that we now have our logo. So I'm going to click off the canvas, and a couple more things we need to do. We're going to first of all make this a transparent canvas. We're going to eliminate the white background so that our logo blends in with whatever background we put it on. So to do that, we're going to come over here on the left and click on this icon that says Basic Edits when you hover over it. And we're going to click on Canvas Color. And we're going to check this box that says Transparent Canvas. And go ahead and click on Apply. And then to save our logo, we're going to come up to the top and click on Save. And we're going to make sure that the file type is a PNG so that we have a transparent background. And then we're going to give the file a title. We'll just call it Logo. And then click on Save to My Computer and just save this on your hard drive where you can find it. And I'll just click on Save. All right, now we've got our logo created. So to add our logo, we're going to go back to the back end, and we're going to access our theme settings by hovering over Appearance and clicking on Customize. Now notice here on the left we have all these different theme options, and here on the right we have the preview mode. And it's important to understand that if you make changes to your theme options here, they won't actually take effect on the front end of your site until you click on the Save button, but they will show up in the preview mode so you can see what those changes would look like on your front end. And also notice that this lower left option that says Collapse, if you click on that, you're going to get a full screen preview mode so you can see exactly what your changes would look like if you were to save them. So I'll click on the Collapse option to bring these back up. Now the first thing we're going to do is upload our logo and adjust our site identity settings. So click on Site Identity and notice that we have the site title and the site tagline. And these are showing up in our header here. Now we're actually going to hide both of these and replace them with our logo, but it's still important to make sure that your title and tagline accurately represent your website because they will be used by search engines, and also they'll show up in various places such as your browser tab. When I hover over the tab, notice that our title and tagline are showing up. So I'm going to replace the tagline with something relevant to my site. And then to hide the title and tagline, I'm just going to check these boxes. And notice that these changes are showing up in our preview mode. And then to add our logo, I'm going to click on Select Logo. And by the way, when we created our logo with PicMonkey, we used the dimensions 350 by 70. And the reason is because that's what our theme says right here. The suggested image dimension is 350 by 70. So I just wanted to point that out so that that made sense to you. And then we're going to choose this Upload Files tab because we're going to upload this file from our actual computer, and click on Select Files to find our logo. And we've got it right here in a folder. And we'll click on that and click on Open. And then I'm going to click on Select, and I'm going to skip the cropping because we've already created our logo to the exact dimension that we want, and that's going to show up in our preview mode here. Now I do want to point out that we're not going to actually create a site icon for the sake of time, but if you wanted to create an icon that shows up where Color Lovers has this heart icon or PicMonkey has this monkey icon, you could do that by creating a site icon that was 512 by 512 pixels, and you could use PicMonkey to do that, and you would just upload that here. But I'm going to go ahead and click on Save and Publish to officially save these changes to our front end. And now when we view the front end, I'm going to refresh the page. And notice that we now have our logo showing up. The next thing we're going to do is create our pages so that we can create a custom navigation menu. And also notice that right now we're on the front page of our website, which by the way is the page that shows up when you just type in your domain name. And notice that by default, it's showing this sample blog post that comes included with WordPress. We're going to create a different page that we want as our front page. So first of all, to view all of our pages, we're going to go back to the back end and we're going to exit out of the theme settings. And we're going to go hover over Pages and click on All Pages. And notice that by default we have this sample page that comes included. If we view the front end, you can see that sample page is showing up in our navigation menu. We're going to go back and we're going to actually delete this sample page because of course we don't need it. We're going to create our own pages. So to do that, you're going to hover over the page and just click on Trash. And I do want to point out that's not actually going to permanently delete it. You could click on the trash folder here and permanently delete it from there or restore it, but we're just going to leave it in the trash folder. And then to create new pages, we can go hover over Pages and click on Add New, or we can click on Add New here. And you're just going to give your page a title, and my first page is going to be called Welcome, and this is going to be the page that I'm later on going to designate to be my home page. So just give it a title and click on Publish here on the right. And of course, we're going to be adding content to our pages here in just a moment, but first we need to create them. And then I'll click on Add New again. And the second page is going to be called Media, so I'll type that in and click on Publish. And I'm just going to repeat the same process for a few more pages. And then this last page I'm going to create is just going to be a temporary page, and I'm going to call it Introduction to Elementor, and we'll publish that. And we're going to just use this page temporarily just to go over a few things, and then we'll delete it later on. And now if I go back to Pages and click on All Pages, you can see that we have all of our new pages created. And then let's go ahead and view the front end of our site and refresh the page. And I want you to notice that by default, our pages are automatically being added to our navigation menu. Now, this isn't actually what we want. We want to be able to create a custom navigation menu so that we can control what pages actually show up and also in which order. So to do that, we're going to go back to the back end and hover over Appearance and click on Menus. And then come up to the top right and click on Screen Options. And first, just make sure that you have these first 4 boxes checked, and then click on Screen Options to minimize that. And then click on Create a New Menu. And just give it a title, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it Main Navigation Menu. Type that in, and then click on Create Menu. And then come over here on the left and click on Pages to bring that option down. And you may need to click on View All to see all of your pages. And then just check the box next to each of your pages. And click on Add to Menu. And that's going to add all of those pages. And then to rearrange your menu items, just click, hold, and drag and release. And I'll do that with the rest of my menu items. And by the way, if you indent a menu item like that, that's actually going to create a drop down, and we'll go over that in a moment. So if you don't want that, just make sure not to indent the page or the menu item. And I'll rearrange a few more of these. All right, and then let's go ahead and scroll down, and you do need to assign your menu. So we created this main navigation menu. Now we need to assign it to a theme location, and different themes will have different theme locations. The GeneratePress theme has one primary menu theme location, so we need to check the box there. And now let's click on Save Menu, and then we'll view the front end of our site, and we're going to have the same pages, but I've got them in a slightly different order. I've got About and Media switched, so when I refresh the page, notice that we see that change take effect because now we're drawing from the main navigation menu that we created. Now let's go back, and I'm going to show you how to change the text of your menu. So we've got this page that we created called Welcome. And by the way, by default, your menu items will take on whatever your page title is. So to change that, we're going to click on the arrow, and we're going to change Welcome to Home. And then let's just click on Save Menu, and we'll view the front end and refresh the page. And you can see that change take effect there. And then let's go back, and I'm just going to drag About and Media over, and this is going to create a drop-down menu. So when I hover over Home, you would get the About and Media pages showing as a drop-down. So I'm going to click on Save, and we'll just view the front end, refresh. So now when I hover over Home, we have this drop-down menu. So let's go back, and of course we don't want that, so I'll drag these back over. And sometimes when you're having a difficult time moving indented menu items over, you can click on them, click on the arrow, and then we're going to say Out from Under Home, and that's going to move it over for us. And then I can click on the arrow there to minimize that. Click on the arrow for Media, and we'll say Out from Under About, and we'll click on the arrow just like that. Now, I also want to show you how to create menu items for pages that you might not necessarily have on your website. So you can actually link to any page on the internet. So let's say we wanted to link to google.com. We're going to click on this Custom Links option on the left. And then the URL, we're going to delete what's there, and we're going to replace it with the link to Google. So we're going to open a new tab and just type in google.com. And then you're going to click on the URL, and you're going to copy that. And we'll go back to the back end, and we're going to paste that in there. And again, remember to delete anything that's there. And then the link text, we can say whatever we want. We can say View Google, and then click on Add to Menu. And we'll just leave it there at the bottom of the menu and click on Save. And now when we view the front end, of course, we're not going to have a drop down anymore. And we now have this link to Google, and I can click on that, and that's going to take me right there. But I'm going to go ahead and go back. And we'll go back to the back end, and we'll click on the Google link, and then we'll remove it. We'll delete it from the menu by clicking on Remove, and then we'll save that and view the front end and refresh the page. All right. The next thing we're going to do is tell WordPress which page we want to be our front page. And again, your front page is the page that shows up when you type in your domain name. And by default, WordPress is set up to show your latest blog post on your front page. And of course, we have this sample blog post. Now you can always keep it that way, especially if you're going to have a more traditional blog type website and you want your blog post to be featured on your front page. But we are actually going to tell WordPress we want to show the welcome page we created on our front page. So to do that, we're going to go back to the back end and we're going to hover over Appearance and click on Customize. And then come down and click on Static Front Page. And of course, you can see that the front page is set to display your latest posts. And that, of course, is referring to your latest blog posts. We're going to select a static page because we want our front page to display a static page. And where it says Select here under Front Page, we're going to select the page we want to be our front page. And of course, we want the welcome page to show up. And then if you didn't want to have a blog at all, you could leave the post page set to select. But of course, we are going to set up a blog, and we're going to be going over setting up a blog in much more detail later in the video. But I'm going to go ahead and select the blog page we created to be our post page. And let's go ahead and save and publish. And then we'll view the front end of our site. And of course, we're on the front page, which is our domain. I'm going to refresh. And you can see we now have our welcome page set up to be our front page. The next thing we're going to do is go over additional theme appearance options. So we'll go back to the back end and we'll go back to the main part of the theme customize options. And of course, if you're on the main part of the back end, you would access these settings by going to Appearance, Customize, and go ahead and click on the Layout tab. And then we'll start with the Container tab. So click on that. And first of all, notice the container width by default is set to 1100 pixels. And if I use this slider to make the width smaller, you can see that this is referring to the content width. And if I collapse, you can see what this would look like. It's much more narrow. I personally like the look of a wider layout. I think it looks more modern. So I'm going to leave this set to the 1100 default setting for now. And we're going to come back to this later in the video when we start using the Elementor page builder. And then also notice that we have this content layout setting and it's set to separate containers by default. These containers are referring to the content container. You can see how it's boxed off here. And then these different widgets are contained within a box of their own. If you change this to one container, you can see that you get this look. And this setting isn't actually going to apply to most of what we do in this tutorial because we're going to be using the Elementor Page Builder plugin to control the look and layout of most of the content between our header and footer, but it will apply to our blog page. So you can play with it and set it however you like. I'm going to just leave it set to separate containers. And then let's go back. And of course, we're under the layout options. Let's go ahead and click on header. And you have a couple of different options here. First of all, the header width by default is set to full. You can change that to be contained. And we'll collapse to see the full screen. And you can see that our header is contained and has this gray background, the same background that we have in our content area. And we will be able to change this background color, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But let's go ahead and go back to our settings here. And I personally like the look of a full width header, so I'm going to leave that set to full. And then for the header alignment, you can play with these different options. You could center your logo there, but I like the look of the default left option. And let's go back and now let's click on the primary navigation options under the layout settings. And you have several different options, so you can get really creative here. First of all, I want to bring your attention to the navigation position. By default, it's set to below header, and you can see that is the case. It's showing up below our header. And we can change that to above the header to get that look. And if you select above or below for your navigation position, you can utilize the navigation width and the navigation alignment options. So the width is, again, you could choose the contained option, and that would give you a very similar look as our contain option on the header setting with this gray background. And you can also choose your navigation alignment, so you could center your menu like that, or you could make it right aligned. But I like the look of the float right option, and you have float left as well, and you can play with those, but I really like this look. And let's go ahead and collapse that to view the full screen preview mode, and I really like the look of the right alignment. And we'll pull back up these options here, and you can play with the navigation drop-down option here. We're going to leave it to hover. And then for navigation search, this is disabled by default. We're going to go ahead and enable that. And notice a couple of different things. First of all, we have the search icon, and your users would be able to click on that and type in a search term and search your website for different content. Also notice how the navigation menu is pushed down below our logo. And the reason for this is because our preview mode here is not wide enough to show the logo and the navigation menu as they're supposed to be shown. If we collapse and view the full screen mode, notice that it looks correct. But if you do notice that you're in this mode, the full screen preview mode, and you're still getting the same problem, then that means you have too much text in your navigation menu. So you need to go back to your menu and adjust the text so that it's a little bit shorter. Now let's go back to our options here, and I'm going to leave all of these as they are. Let's go ahead and go back, and we're going to cover sidebar and footer settings later on in the video. So we're going to go back once more to our main theme options panel and go ahead and click on the colors option. And first of all, notice that we have this background color, and it's currently set to the light gray, and you can see that it's light gray here. We can change that by clicking on select color, and you could put in whatever hex code you want that represents the color that you want, or you could select a color down here, and we'll just click on the blue, and then that would change that to that blue. And then of course you could choose any color that you want by click holding and dragging here. But I'm going to click on default to change that back to the light gray. And remember that we're going to be customizing our content in between the header and footer for just about every page that we create. In fact, all of our pages except for the blog page and our blog post pages. So just keep that in mind. This is going to affect your blog page, this background color. And then you also have your text color, and this is referring to all of the text here. And then your link color is set to this blue by default, and this is referring to the blue title that you see, the blog post title, and then all of these links in our sidebar currently. We can change that by clicking on select color, and I'm going to go back and get the hex code of our orange from our color palette. So I'll just select that and I'll copy it, and then we'll go back to the back end and select what's there. And we'll leave the pound symbol but delete the rest, and then we'll paste in that other hex code. And you can see that change take effect. And I do want to point out that some of your links will still be blue when you hover over them, such as the date here or the author of the blog post. And that's fine. That's just the way it is with the free version of the GeneratePress theme. And blue is a very common link color for a lot of different websites. So don't worry about that. And then if we come down, we also have this link hover option. So notice it's set to this really dark shade currently. So when I hover over these links, you get that dark shade, and I'm just going to leave it set to that. And this is the color that your link would show up as if your users had already clicked on the link. And I'm just going to click on select color and change that to the same color as our link is, which is the orange. I'll just paste in that hex code again. Let's go ahead and go back, and again, we're under the main theme options panel, and now we're going to adjust our font. And so we'll click on typography. And I do want to point out that your font option here is going to refer to the font in your menu, and also the font in your blog content, your blog posts, and your sidebar, and anything in your footer. Now we're going to use the Elementor page builder to customize everything on all of our pages, so you don't have to worry about this font affecting that, but it will affect all the things that I just mentioned. So for that reason, I definitely encourage you to choose a very legible font, and I really like the Open Sans font, but you could choose the Oswald, for example, and that would change in just a moment. You'll see that reflect here in our menu. This is the Oswald font, and you can see it reflect in our content here. And you can imagine this font probably wouldn't be ideal if you had to read a long blog post with this font. It wouldn't be as easy to read. So for that, again, I recommend a very legible font. So we're going to stick with Open Sans, and you can play with these font settings. And I like the size of 17, but again, you can adjust that if you want. So let's go ahead and save and publish all of the changes that we've made. And then we'll view the front end, and let's refresh the page. And notice that our changes have taken effect. We are now at a point where we're going to start adding content to our pages, but notice that by default, we have basically a 2-column layout. We have this content column here with our page title, and then we have this sidebar widget area column on the right, and we'll be discussing widgets and widget areas later in the video. But for all of our pages, we're going to be using the Elementor Page Builder plugin, and that's going to enable us to have any kind of layout for any given page that we want. So we can have as many different rows or as many different columns as we want to have. We'll also be able to customize our pages with things like custom background colors, images, and even background videos, and things like custom fonts, transparencies, overlays, icons, just about anything else you can think of. So first, we're going to install and activate the Elementor Page Builder plugin. So to do that, let's go back to the back end, and we're going to exit out of these theme options, and we're going to go to plugins and click on add new, and then come over to the top right, and we're going to type in Elementor. And we want the Elementor page builder in the upper left here, so we're going to click on install now, and then click on activate. All right. So the first thing I want to do is give you an introduction to the Elementor page builder so you can get a basic understanding of how it works. And I do want to emphasize that this section is meant to be a primer for you, so don't worry if some things aren't making complete sense right now. We're going to be going through many different examples as we create our pages throughout the rest of the tutorial. So with a little bit of practice and repetition, I definitely feel confident that you'll soon be able to create custom designs on your own. And if possible, I do highly recommend that you install Elementor on your own site and imitate the examples in this tutorial. I also recommend my free PDF guide that you can download in the video description beneath this video. That should be really helpful for you. So let's go ahead and open up the Introduction to Elementor page in the front end. And then we'll go back to the back end and go to Pages, click on All Pages. And we'll click on the Introduction to Elementor page to open that up in the page editor. And now that we've installed and activated the Elementor page builder plugin, we have this button that says Edit with Elementor. Go ahead and click on that. And this is going to activate the Elementor page builder. So first of all, we want to have 100% of the control over all of our content between our header and our footer. And we can definitely do this, but you'll notice there are several limitations currently. So first, notice that we have the same structure that we had before with our content title here on the left in this one column, and then we have our sidebar widget area in this other column. Also notice that like before, all of the content between our header and footer is contained within these white boxes, and we have this light gray background by default. All of these things are limiting our options. What if we wanted to customize the page title? What if we don't want to have these white boxes and this light gray background? What if we don't want to show a sidebar widget area? Fortunately, the GeneratePress theme has fantastic page options that allow us to truly create a blank slate so that we can use Elementor to customize 100% of our content. So before we really get into using the page builder, we need to optimize our page settings to get the most out of it. So let's go back to our page editor in the main part of the backend by coming down to the bottom left, click on the X, and then click on Go to Dashboard. And that's going to take us back to the page editor. And then let's come up to the top right and click on Screen Options. And make sure you have all the same options checked that I have, especially the sidebar layout option, the page builder integration, and the disable elements. And then click on Screen Options again to minimize that. And then scroll down here on the right, we're looking for the sidebar layout section, and notice by default it's set to the global layout settings. And what this is referring to is our sidebar widget area, and we don't want to have a sidebar widget area at all. We want to be able to completely customize everything with Elementor. So we're going to select the Content No Sidebars option, so just check that, and then scroll down, and under Page Builder Integration, we want to check the box that says Full Width Content, and what that's going to do is it's going to eliminate the boxed layout that we have by default. So those white backgrounds that are boxed and the light gray background color that we have is going to be eliminated, and now we're going to have complete control over what our backgrounds actually look like. And then we also want to check the box next to the content title to disable the content title. That way we can use Elementor to create our own titles, and then we'll have 100% of the control over those. So let's scroll up to the top and go ahead and click on Update to save these changes. And let's go ahead and open up the Elementor plugin again by clicking on Edit with Elementor. And now you can see we truly have a blank slate. So the first thing we're going to do is create a section. So I'm going to click on this Add New Section button. And let's say we wanted to create a section with 2 evenly spaced columns. I could choose this option here. And that's going to create 2 different columns. And notice when I hover over each column, you see the 50% in the upper right, and that indicates that each column is taking up 50% of the allotted width. And I can always hover over the left column and click, hold, and drag this inside edge to redistribute the proportion of the column. Now, if I wanted to add another column, I could hover over either of these columns and click on Column and click on the addition symbol. And that's going to add another column to this section. And if I wanted to rearrange the width of each column now, I can do the same thing by click holding and dragging the inside edge of either of the left 2 columns. Now let's say I wanted to delete a column. I could hover over the column that I want to delete, click on column, and click on the red X symbol, and then click on delete. And that's going to remove the column, and now I'm left with 2 columns again. Let's say I wanted to delete one more and just have a 1 column section. I could do the same thing, click on column, and click on the red X and delete, and now I'm left with 1 column. Now every section will contain at least 1 column, and you can add content to your columns through the use of what are called elements. And elements are what are displaying here on the left, and you can click on this icon to bring up your elements if they're not showing up. And if we scroll down, you can use the traditional widgets that come included with a WordPress installation. So all of these elements are going to enable us to add all kinds of different content to any column, and we're going to be going over many of these elements throughout the tutorial. So let's start by adding a heading element to our column. So to do that, click, hold, and drag the element over and release it into the column. And that's automatically going to bring up the element settings here on the left, but just so you know, you can access the element settings for a particular element by clicking on it, or also by hovering over it and clicking this blue pencil icon. So your element settings will usually have 3 types of settings. The content settings are your most basic settings. This is where we would control what the text actually says in the heading, and we could also make our text a clickable link by pasting in a URL here to another web page, and a few of these other options. The style settings are going to be where you make more of your customizations, so you can change things like the text color, or if we click on where it says default next to typography and change it to custom, you have all these different font options, so you can literally control everything about the font of your elements. And just so you know, you have over 600 Google fonts to choose from here, and you can change things like the boldness of your font and all these other things. The advanced settings, we're going to get into this later on in the video, so don't worry about that for now. Let's go back to the content settings here for the heading element, and I'm going to select the text that's in place by default and delete it, and I'm just going to give it a different title. It's just going to be Intro to Elementor. I'll type that in. And I could put in a link to another page. I'm just going to leave this blank because I don't want it to be a link. And then I could also center the text, for example, but I'm going to leave it aligned left. And then let's switch to the style settings. And first, I'm going to change the text color by clicking on this box here. And I could choose any color from here, and then I could click, hold, and drag to select any color I want. I could also select the hex code up here and remove that and paste in a hex code from our color palette. But I'm just going to leave the text color set to this green for now. And then I can click on the color box to minimize those options. And remember, we switched the typography settings to custom, and now we have all these different settings. And let's say I wanted to change the font. I can click on default next to family, and I could go through all of these different Google fonts, but I've got one called Cabin that I found. I'm just going to type it in the search here, and then I'll select the Cabin font, and you can see that change take effect. And let's say I wanted to change the size of my font. I can use this slider here under size, or I could select the number and type in my own font size. So I'll just type in 38, and you can see that change take effect. And I'll just leave all these other text settings set to the default settings. And then one thing I do want to point out is this: if you hover over this gray arrow here, it's going to turn red, and you can click on it, and this is going to give you the exact full screen preview of what your site's actually going to look like on the front end. So we can click on this again to bring back our element settings. So to save your changes, you do have to click on this green save button. And I do want to point out that if you click on this X and then you clicked on go back or go to dashboard, for example, your changes would not be saved. And this can actually come in handy if you accidentally make changes that you don't want to keep. You can just go back to your dashboard without clicking on the green save button. And next time you open up the Elementor page builder for that page, it's just going to pull up what you had last time you did save. So just something to be aware of. But we are going to go ahead and save the change. So let's click on the save button. And we'll get a message that says saved. And now, of course, we can view the front end of our site. And we're on the Introduction to Elementor page. And when we refresh, notice that we have our changes taking effect. And also, I do want to point out that our footer area is pushed up much further than it will normally be because we don't have hardly any content added to this page. Now let's go back, and I'm going to add some more text underneath our heading. And to do that, I'm going to come up and click on this elements icon, and that's going to pull up all the elements. And I want the text editor element here, so I'll just click, hold, and drag and release that. And we're going to go over the text editor element in much more detail later in the video, but for now I just want to get some more content added to our section. So I'm just going to come over here and select what's there and delete it, and I'll copy and paste some text here. And you can see that text adds. So now that we have more content inside our one column section, we're going to briefly go over section settings, but keep in mind that everything we do from here on out is going to expand on what we've covered in this Elementor introduction. So we'll get into more details as we go, and remember, if you don't understand everything right away, there are many more examples to come. So to access your section settings, you would hover over the content within your section, and remember, we have a heading element and a text editor element all within one section. So we could hover over either of these, and we're going to click on the section option that will appear. And this is going to pull up our section settings on the left. Now we're going to go over layout settings in just a moment, but first I want to change the background of this section. So to do that, I'm going to click on the Style tab, and then under Background, I'm going to click on the paintbrush icon. And next to Color, I'm going to click on the box, and I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and find a light gray. And that'll do for now. So now let's go back to our section layout settings, and first notice that by default the content width is set to this boxed option. I'm going to click on this arrow to get the full screen preview of exactly what our site's going to look like, and notice that our content is sort of boxed in. You can see that instead of going full width from one side of the screen all the way to the other side, it's contained within this box. But also notice that it stretches a little bit wider than our header. You can see our logo's cut off about here, but the content goes to about here. And I'm going to go back and open my settings up. The reason for this is because the content width by default for the box layout is set to 1140 pixels. And our Generate Press theme settings have our website set to a little bit smaller at 1100 pixels wide. So we're going to change this so that our site's more uniform. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and save the change that we made. And I'm going to go ahead and open the front end and refresh the page so that that change is visible. And let's go back, and we're going to come down and exit out of the Elementor page builder, and we're going to click on Go to Dashboard. And first of all, I want to show you that if we go to the Elementor settings by hovering over Elementor and clicking on Settings, you can see that next to Content Width, it's set to 1140 pixels. Now to adjust our Generate Press theme settings so that it's the same, we're going to go back and hover over Appearance and click on Customize. And we're going to click on Layout and click on Container. And right here you can see that it's still set to 1100 pixels. So we're going to type in 1140, and let's go ahead and click on Save and Publish. And now when we view the front end of the site, and as soon as I refresh, you're going to notice that the logo is going to be a little further out, and it's going to be more in line with our content. Just like that. So let's go back, and we're going to go over a few more section settings. So I'm going to exit out of our theme options here. And we'll go back to Pages and click on All Pages. And we're going to open up the Introduction to Elementor page again. And we'll click on Edit with Elementor to pull up the Elementor page builder. And remember, to access our section settings, we're going to hover over the content within our section and click on the Section button here. And that's going to pull up our section settings here on the left. So we've already gone over the default boxed content width layout setting, and just to show you again, that's automatically expanding to 1140 pixels by default. So in essence, when this is blank, it's reverting to the default setting of 1140 pixels wide. But you can also use this slider to set a custom width. And you can see if I set it to 930 there and view the full screen preview, you can see that it's much narrower. And actually one distinction that I want to point out that needs to be really clear is that even though we're using a boxed layout, our background, whether it's a background color in our case, or a background image, or even a background video, that background is actually going to expand from one side of the screen all the way to the other. So your background is actually going to be full width. So that can be a little confusing at first, but just know that the boxed width, your background is still going to be full width, but the content within your section, so we have our header here and we have our text editor element, those are going to be contained within a specified boxed width. And right now it's set to 930, but if I remove that, it's going to revert back to the 1140 default setting. We also have a full width content width option, and if I select that and view the full screen preview, notice that now the content within our section is expanding full width from one side of the screen all the way to the other. Now I prefer using the boxed width, and everything we're going to do in this particular tutorial is going to use the boxed width, so I'm just going to change that back. So another thing we're going to go over is the section height setting here. And by default, the section height is going to automatically expand so that it is large enough to contain all of the content within the section. So if we added more content, our section would automatically expand to contain it. Now, we also have the option to fit to screen for the section height. And what that's going to do is make the section height the same size as your computer screen. So you can see that it literally takes up the entire screen on the browser. Now, when you use the section height fit to screen option, you also get this column position, and by default, it is set to the middle, and this is referring to all of our content within the column that we have, and it's automatically in the middle. So if I change that, I can set it to appear at the top, and you can see that it moves the content to the top, and I can move the column content to the bottom, just like that. So the fit to screen option is going to be a really handy feature that we're going to use later on in this tutorial. But for now, I'm going to use the default option, and we'll just leave it like that. And just to give you a quick review, I'm going to click on the element button here to pull up the elements and get out of our section settings. We accessed our section settings by hovering over the content within our section and clicked on the section button here, and that pulled up our section settings. And then we clicked on the Style tab, and we changed our background to have a background color by clicking on this paintbrush icon, and we selected a color here. And then we went to the Layout section tab for our section settings, and we played with the content width option of full width, and we also played with our height option. And real quick, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm going to click on the default height option. We went over the fit to screen and default settings, but the min height, if you choose that option, that's going to enable you to specify a height, and it's important to know that your section is going to be at least as big as it needs to be to contain the content within it when you choose the min height option. So notice that when I make it smaller, it's not going to get any smaller than it has to be to contain my header and text editor elements. But I can make it bigger, and I can adjust it like that. And then with the min height option, you also, just like with the fit to screen option, you also get this column position, and we could align the content top, middle, or bottom. But again, we're going to use the default height option. The next thing I want to do is add another column to this section. So to do that, I can hover over the section and click on the column tab and click on the addition symbol. And that's going to add another column, and it's going to make both of these columns 50% wide. I'm going to rearrange the width by holding and dragging on this inner edge here, and I'm going to make it 70-30. And then I can always add elements to this column by coming over here, clicking on the Elements button, and holding and dragging an element and releasing it in place. But I'm going to delete this element. And I want to show you how to duplicate elements. So let's say we want to have another heading and we want it to have the same properties as this heading. I can hover over the element that I want to duplicate and click on this middle blue button, and that's going to make an identical copy. And then I can hover over it and hold and drag this pencil icon and release it in place, just like that. Now I would be able to click on the pencil icon for this element and pull up the element settings, and I could just change the title, and it's going to have the exact same properties as this other element. So the text color, the font, all of these customization settings that we do over here are going to be identical. Another thing I want to point out is that you can hover over either of these columns, and because they're contained within the same section, both of these section buttons, if I click on that and go to the Style tab, you can see that we have the gray background. And if I do the same over here and click on the Section tab, it's going to pull up this same screen. It's not even going to change. And you can see that it also has the gray background. So we can access our section settings by hovering over any of the content within that section, and either column is going to give us this section button, and it's going to refer to the exact same section. Now, I also want to show you how to rearrange your columns, and you can hold and drag on the column you want to rearrange, and we can move it over here and release, and you can see that that rearranged it. And then we would need to, of course, redistribute our weight however we wanted to do it. If we wanted 70-30 or 30-70, we could rearrange it just like that. And the rearranging also works for your individual elements. If I wanted to move this text above this heading element, I could click, hold, and drag on the pencil icon and release just like that. But I'm going to click, hold, and drag and move that back underneath. And I do want to point out, in this case, it's difficult to release this element underneath the heading. If you get a situation like that where you're not able to rearrange, just rearrange the other element. And so I'll just move this one back above. And then, of course, to delete an entire column, I can hover over the column that I want to delete and click on column, and then click on the delete symbol and click on delete, just like that. Now we're back to what we started with. All right, that concludes the introduction to Elementor. Now we could just delete this page entirely, but I'm going to go back to my dashboard by clicking on the X and click on go to dashboard, and I'll just leave the page. And instead of deleting it, we're just going to remove it from the navigation menu. So let's go back to appearance, click on menus. And then we'll make sure we've got our main navigation menu open, and we do. So we'll scroll down, and I'm going to click on the Introduction to Elementor menu item, click on the arrow rather, scroll down and just click on Remove, and we'll click on Save menu. And now when we view the front end of our site, we can click on another page, and you can see that our menu is updated and no longer showing the Introduction to Elementor page. The next thing we're going to do is add content to our media page. So I'm just going to open that up in the front end. And then let's go back to the back end, and we're going to go to Pages, All Pages, and we're going to click on the media page to open that up in the page editor. And then remember, the first thing we need to do is optimize our page settings so that we have 100% control over our content area with the Elementor Page Builder plugin. So let's scroll down, and for the sidebar layout, of course, we're going to check the Content No Sidebars option. And then we'll check the box for full width content, and we'll disable the title by checking the content title box. And let's go ahead and come up to the top and click on Update to save these changes. And then we're going to come over, and of course we're going to click on the Edit with Elementor button, and that's going to open up the Elementor Page Builder for the media page. And before we actually start creating our media page, I want to go over a few more Elementor settings. So let's come up to the top, and we're going to click on this icon to bring up some of our additional Elementor options. Now we're not going to worry about global colors in this tutorial, but we are going to adjust the global font settings, so go ahead and click on that. And we'll start with the primary headline. Go ahead and click on that and bring down the options. And this is the default font for elements such as your heading element. So whatever font you have here is going to be the default font when you use the heading element throughout your site. Now, of course, you can always change this, but this could potentially save you a step in choosing a font if you're going to have the same font for all of your headings. But we're actually going to have a couple of different fonts for our headings throughout our site. So we're going to leave this set to Roboto. We're not going to worry about it. But we are going to change the body text, and I'll click on that to bring down the options. We're going to use the same Open Sans font for all of our body text, and this is the font that we used for our Generate Press font setting, so the same font that we have in our menu, for example. So I'm going to change this where it says Roboto, just click on that, and I'll type in Open Sans, and that's going to pull up. I'll click on it. And so all of our elements that use body text, such as our text editor elements, will automatically have this Open Sans font. So I'm going to click on Apply, and then I'm going to come down and click on Save to make sure that change saves. The next thing we're going to do is set up our color palette within Elementor, and we already have our color palette picked out here, but we need to create our color palette in Elementor. And just to give you an idea of exactly what's going to happen when we create our color palette, I'm just going to quickly add a temporary section. I'll just click on the one column option. Then I'll just click on the Elements button and drag in a heading element. And if I click on the Style tab and then click on the box next to Text Color, notice that underneath our color picker we have all these predetermined colors, and I can click on any of these, and it's automatically going to change this element to this color. And these colors all represent a very specific hex code. So what we're going to do is set up our own custom color palette, and that way our custom colors will be underneath here instead of the ones that are showing up right now. So to set that up, we're going to go back and click on this icon, and then click on Color Picker. And we're going to replace each one of these with a color from our color palette. So I'll start with this top left color, just click on it, and we'll select the hex code that's there and delete it, and then we'll come back and click on our color palette. We'll copy the hex code for the blue, and we'll paste that in place. And then just click on the blue box. And this one here is set to white already. We're just going to leave that because we're going to be using white titles throughout our site. So I'll just click on this box, and then we'll adjust this light blue by clicking on it, and we'll delete the hex code that's there, leave the pound symbol, come back and replace this with our green by copying the hex code. Paste that, and then we'll adjust this color. Come back to our color palette. I'm going to grab this orange here at the bottom. And we'll paste that in and click on the orange box. Now for these gray colors, I'm going to start with this one. I'll click on it and delete what's there. And for my dark gray color, I want to use the same color from our menu. So to do that, I'm going to click on the Pick Color from Page with the ColorZilla tool that we discussed earlier in the video. And then I can just hover over the menu, and you can see the pound symbol is the 6 2s. I can click on that to copy it. Now, I could just type in the 6 2s, but notice that it kind of gets a little rebellious. It kind of fills it in for me. And if you have that happen to where it fills in the wrong hex code, just delete it and try it again, and we'll just paste it in, and I'll remove one of the pound symbols. And then we can just click on the color box. And then for the lighter gray, I'm going to click on that and select what's there and delete it. I'm going to use the ColorZilla tool, pick color from page, and I'm going to use the color of my menu hover. And that's going to be 3F, 3F, 3F. So again, I could type that in. And notice that, again, it gets a little rebellious sometimes. This is just a weird little quirk. I'm just going to select it and try it again. And that time it worked. So just click on the box. And that looks pretty good. We've got our color set up. So let's go ahead and click on Apply. And we'll click on Save to make sure these changes take effect. And now when I click on the element to bring up the element settings and click on the style and click on this green box here, notice that our colors have updated to represent the colors from our color palette. And real quick, since these last two shades of green aren't actually from our color palette, I'm going to go back, click on this icon, and click on the color picker again. And I'm just going to change both of these to white. I'll delete what's there, and I'll just select the white color. And that'll fill in the hex code for me, and then I'll do the same with this one. I'll just select the white one. All right, and that's going to be much better, and that way it's very clear what colors are actually on my color palette now that all of them are. So I'm going to click on Apply. And then let's go ahead and delete this section so that we're starting with a blank slate. So just hover over it, click on Section, and then click on the X symbol, and click on Delete. All right. We're going to start out pretty basic when it comes to the Elementor Page Builder plugin, but we're going to get more sophisticated and advanced as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on Add New Section, and I'm going to choose a 1-column layout. And then I'm going to come over here, and all of my elements are showing up, and if they're not, click on this icon to pull them up. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag this heading element and release it in place. And that's automatically going to pull up the heading settings over here on the left, and under the Content tab, the first thing we're going to do is change the title. So I'll select what's there and delete it. And this is going to be Photo Gallery, so I'll just type that in. And then I don't want this to be a clickable link, so I'm going to leave this section blank, and then I'll leave all these other options set to the default. And then I'm going to come up and click on the Style tab, and the first thing I want to do is change the text color, so I'll click on that. And I want to use white, but watch what happens. Of course, when I choose the white color, it's automatically going to blend in with the white background. So we'll come back to that. For now, I'm just going to make it dark, so I'll choose that option. And then I'll click on the box to minimize the color settings. Now for the typography, we're going to change it from default to custom, and that's going to pull up all of these typography settings. We're going to start with the font family, and I can change the font by clicking where it says default. And you could go through all of these different fonts one by one to see what the different fonts look like, but since there are over 600 Google fonts there, that would take forever. So what I would suggest you do if you're looking for a font, I would search Google for best Google web fonts, and then that's going to pull up different pages with different examples of some of people's favorite Google fonts, and that would help you narrow down your font selection. And then you could come back, and once you find one you like, you can search for it in this box. And I found one that I really like called Amatica SC, so I'm going to type that in. And then I'll just select it there, and you can see that that font changes. And I really like this font. I think it's a nice looking handwriting font. So what I'm going to do from here is go back up to the size setting, and you can use this slider, or you could type in a number, and I'm just going to select it and type in 68, and that's going to adjust the size for me. And then you have all these different options that we'll go through real quickly. The weight is going to be the boldness of your font. So if you wanted to go with a heavier weight, you could choose different options, and you can see that by default, our heading is already at the boldest selection, so we'll just leave it on the default option. And then the transform You can play with these different options to get different looks. We're going to leave it to default. And then the style is where you would go italic or oblique or normal. We'll leave it to the default again. And then the line height is going to adjust how much spacing is above and below each line of text. And I'll just select what's here and delete it to revert back to the default. Letter spacing is a neat option because you can get different looks as well. And just to show you what that would look like, you can play with different settings. Again, we're going to use the default, so I'll delete what's there. One thing I do want to say about choosing a heading font is that you can feel free to get a little more adventurous and a little more creative. When we chose a body font, we went with Open Sans, and we did that because it's incredibly legible, very easy to read. So your heading font still needs to be legible, of course, but you can get a little more creative because your headings are going to be much shorter than your body text, so there's not going to be near as much on the page to read. So just wanted to point that out for you. The next thing we're going to do is add an image gallery underneath our photo gallery heading here. And before we can do that, you need to download and resize your images that are going to be used in the image gallery. And I've actually already got all of my images downloaded and resized in a folder on my computer, but I want to take you through the process. So I'm going to open a new tab, and an incredible free resource for high quality stock photos is unsplash.com. And all of the images on this site you can use for free, and you don't even have to leave an attribution to the creator of the image. And you can just browse through the different images and you can see how incredibly high quality they are. And I do want to point out that I've left links to all of the images that I'm using in this tutorial in the free PDF guide, so be sure to download that. You can also use the search feature, and I'm going to search for an image, and I'm just going to type in Polaroid. And then I'll come down, and if this is the one I want, in this case it is, I'm going to click on it, and then you can download it by clicking on the download button. I'm going to control click or right click if you're using a PC and open this in a new tab. And then just to show you, when I click on this image, you can see that the full size image is absolutely enormous. But this is what we're going to download, so I'm just going to control click or right click with the PC and save the image to my computer. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop and click on save. And then we definitely need to resize this image because this is just much too large to add to our website. It would take way too long for it to load. So we're going to exit out of this tab, and we're going to open a new tab and use another free resource called Pixlr. So type in pixlr.com, that's Pixlr.com. And then we're going to scroll down, and we're going to click on Launch Web App under Pixlr Editor. And we're going to open an image from computer, so I'll select that option. And then we'll find it on our desktop here and click on Open. And then to resize this image, we're going to come up and click on Image and then Image Size. And you can see that by default it's 4000 by 3000. That's the dimension. I'm going to select the 4000, the width, and delete it and type in 1280 pixels. And this is an arbitrary number, but I find that 1280 pixels is going to be big enough for our image gallery images, and also the images aren't going to be too large, so they're not going to take very long to load. So we're going to stick with that, and that's automatically going to resize the height of the image to keep it in proportion to the width, which you definitely want, otherwise your image will get distorted. So make sure this box is checked to constrain proportions and click on OK. And you can see that our image is much smaller, and of course we're only viewing it at 19%. If I select this in the bottom left and delete it and type in 100%, you can see this is the actual size of our image. So we're going to save the image to our computer by going to File and click on Save. And then you can rename the file. And a JPEG is fine. And then for these images, for the image gallery images that are 1280 pixels wide, I'm going to leave the quality set to 80 and just click on OK. And then you would just save these files to somewhere on your computer where you can find them. Now, like I said, I've already done this with all of my images, and you would repeat the process. We're going to be using 10 images in our image gallery. So you would just repeat the exact same process for all 10 images and save them to your computer. So to create our image gallery, we're going to go back to the back end, and of course we're in the Elementor page builder. We're going to click on the element button to bring up all of our elements, and then we're going to find the image gallery. And so I'll scroll down, and it's here on the left. I'm going to click, hold, and drag and release it underneath our heading. And then to add images, that's going to automatically pull up our image gallery element settings. And we're of course under the content tab. To add images to our gallery, we're going to click on add images here. And then we're going to click on upload files because we need to upload these files from our computer. And then we're going to click on select files. And then I'm going to find all of my image gallery files in the folder that I have here. And then I'm going to click on the top one, hold shift on my keypad and click on the bottom one. That's going to select all 10 of them. And then I'm going to click on open, and that's going to upload them one at a time. And after all of those upload, we're going to click on create new gallery. And then I do want to point out that you can rearrange your image gallery images by click holding and dragging and releasing, just like that. Also, for each one, you could remove them by clicking on the X here. And when we click on each individual image, you're going to get options on the right for additional text, and you can fill out a caption or descriptive text, and this would show up on your image gallery in various places. It would also be a good idea to fill out descriptive or caption text for search engine optimization purposes. But for the sake of time, we're not going to worry about any of this, but you can experiment with that on your own. And then we're going to click on Insert Gallery. And that's going to add all of our images. Now let's come over here on the left, and of course we're still under our image gallery element settings. We're going to change the image size to the medium option. And I like the look of 5 images per row, so we'll have 2 rows of 5. So I'm going to select 5 columns. And we're going to leave a link to media file, and you'll see why this is important here in just a moment when we add our lightbox effect. And then the ordering we're going to leave to default because we want our ordering to be what we specified up here. And by the way, we can edit our ordering or add and remove images by clicking on our image gallery there. And you could rearrange again if you wanted to. You could also add more images to your gallery there. But we're just going to leave it as it is and click on Insert Gallery. Now, another thing I want to point out real quickly is notice how our image gallery is fairly uniform, except for this one image is taller than the other ones. We're going to fix this by cropping this image so that it's the same height as the one next to it. So to do that, we're going to open our image gallery back up, and we're going to actually use WordPress to crop the image. And first we need to click on this image and look at the dimensions. So when I click on it, over here on the right, you're going to see that it's 1280 pixels, that's the width, and then it's 854 pixels in height. When I click on this image, notice that it's 1280, but it's 960 pixels in height. So that's why it's not aligning with the other images in our gallery. So with this image selected, we're going to click on Edit Image. And then we're going to click, hold, and drag on the image and just draw. It doesn't have to be perfect at all because once you get a selection, you're going to have the option down here to adjust it. So we're going to make this 1280 because that's the width that we want. And then remember the height of the other image was 854. So we're going to type in 854, and that's going to automatically adjust our crop box. And then you can click, hold, or drag to move the crop selection up or down. And when you get it where you want it, you're going to come over and click on this crop button. And for some reason, I have to hover over the very top of the button for that to be a clickable option. So I'm going to crop that. And then we're going to click on Save. And then we're going to come over and click on Insert Gallery. And you can see that it is now uniform. So let's go ahead and save what we've done with the Elementor page builder. And we'll view the front end of our site. And let's refresh the page. And you can see that we now have our image gallery added and of course our heading. And when we click on the images in our gallery, notice that they're going to open up in a separate window on their own. Well, I'm going to go back and I want to point out this is because when we go back to our page builder, you can see that we've linked to the media file. We could select none here, and that way they wouldn't be clickable links at all. You wouldn't even have that option. But we're going to leave them to media file because that's what they need to be set at for our lightbox feature to work. So the next thing we're going to do is set up our lightbox. So to do that, we're going to exit out of the Elementor page builder and click on Go to Dashboard, and we'll just leave the page. And we're going to be using a plugin. So to download the plugin, hover over Plugins on the left and click on Add New. And then come over to the search box in the upper right. We're going to type in Simple Lightbox. And the one we want is this one on the upper left here. So click on Install Now. And then we're going to click on Activate. And immediately this plugin is going to start working if we view the front end and refresh the page. Now when we click on our images, we're going to get this lightbox effect that pops up. And it's going to have this white background by default, this white border. And it's also going to transition automatically from one image to the next, like a slideshow. And we're going to adjust this setting and turn that feature off, and I'll just exit out. And let's go back to the back end, and to do that, we're going to hover over Appearance. And now that we have this plugin, we've got this lightbox option. Click on that, and we're going to scroll down. And right here under the UI settings, first of all, we've got the theme is set to the light theme by default. I'm going to turn that to the dark theme. And I just happen to like the look of that, and you'll see that in just a moment. And also notice that the Start Slideshow automatically is enabled. I'm going to uncheck that box and disable that. So let's scroll down to the bottom and save our change by clicking the button there. And now when we review the front end of our site and refresh the page and click on one of our photos, notice that we have this dark image gallery border, and it's not going to transition automatically, but you can use these arrows and your users would be able to look at your different photos. And we can just click outside of the lightbox to exit out of that. And the next thing we're going to do is add a background image to our photo gallery section. And we're going to use the same Polaroid image that we downloaded from Unsplash. But we do need to create a new size of that image. We need to make it a little bit larger than the 1280 pixel wide image we used for our image gallery. And the reason I recommend going a little bit wider for your background images is because they have to span from one side of the screen all the way to the other. And also you need to account for larger monitors. So for that reason, I suggest using a background image that's 1600 pixels wide. So we're going to go back to pixlr.com. And of course, we'll scroll down and we'll click on Launch Web App under Pixlr Editor. And then of course, we're going to open the image from our computer, or if you're in the main part of the Pixlr Editor, you can go to File and click on Open Image. And we're going to find this file that we downloaded from Unsplash on our hard drive, and I've got it right here on my desktop. Click on Open, and then we're going to go through the exact same procedure to resize the image by going to Image, click on Image Size, and we're going to change the 4000 to 1600 since that's the width that we want. Leave Constrain Proportions checked, and that will fill in the height for you. Click on OK. And then we're going to save the image by going to File, click on Save, and give it a name. Leave the format set to JPEG, and then for the quality, we're going to actually bump this down a little bit because notice that right now the file size is going to be 245 kilobytes. By lowering the quality to 70, we can reduce the file size to 193 kilobytes. And this is just a good practice to help your website load faster, specifically for background images that are 1600 pixels wide. You can try reducing the quality, and as long as you don't notice a reduction in the quality of the image on your website, then I would definitely recommend lowering the quality. Otherwise, I would keep the quality at least 80 if you do notice a reduction in the image quality. We're going to click on OK. And you're going to save this file to your computer where you can find it. I've already got all mine saved to a background images folder, so I'm just going to click on Cancel. And then to add the background image to our website, we're going to go back to the back end, and we're going to go back to Pages, click on All Pages, and we're going to open up our media page again, and then click on Edit with Elementor to pull up the Elementor page builder. And then to add our background image to the section, we're going to hover over the section content, and that's going to pull up this section tab. Go ahead and click on the section tab. And when you do that, it's going to pull up the section settings here on the left. And we're going to leave all of these layout settings set to the default option. And then to add our background image, we're going to click on the Style tab. And just like we did when we added a background color to our section earlier in the video, we're going to click on the paintbrush icon. And then instead of choosing a color here, we're going to add an image by clicking on the addition symbol. And then we're going to click on Upload Files and then select Files to find this file on our computer. And I've got it right here in this background images folder. I'll click on that, and you can see that it's the 1600 pixel wide image option. And then I'll click on Open. And then click on Insert Media. And now we have our background image. Now, when you add a background image, you're going to get all these different options underneath here. And we'll go over these real quickly. The position option is set to none by default, but I can click on that. And I have all these different positioning options, and I can choose the bottom center, for example, and that's going to show the background image more towards the bottom. And the attachment option is set to none by default. And notice that when I scroll, the background image is moving along with the content on the page. Now, if I change this attachment to fixed, notice that when I scroll, the background image is remaining fixed on the page and the content is scrolling around it. And I really like this effect, so we're going to leave that to fixed. For repeat, I always leave that set to none, and then for the size, if I click on where it says none, notice that we have several different options, and I'm going to choose the cover option, and before I click on that, Notice the image as it is now, but when I click on it, watch it change. You're going to actually see a lot more of the image. So I really like this cover option. And then, of course, we can view the full screen preview to see exactly what this would look like on our site. And that looks pretty good. So let's pull up our options again. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and change our heading color. So to do that, we can hover over the heading and click on the blue pencil icon to pull up the element settings here on the left. And of course, we're going to click on the Style tab. And next to text color, we'll click on the box and select the white option now. All right, and then the next thing I want to do is show you how to create a white background for your image gallery. So we're going to move the cursor over the image gallery and click on the pencil icon to pull up the element settings for the image gallery. And we'll come over and instead of choosing the Style tab, we're going to actually use the Advanced tab. Now we'll be going over margin and padding settings later on in the video, but for now let's click on the background and border option and then choose the paintbrush icon, click on that. And then to change our image gallery background, we're going to click on the color box here, and then we'll choose the white that we have in our color palette. And you can see that we now have a white background. Now, I definitely encourage you to play with all of the element settings here on the left for all of your different elements and all of your different sections. There's no reason not to, because you can experiment with all kinds of different options and get a full screen preview of what those options will look like all before they actually show up on the front end. Of course, they won't show up on your actual website unless you save the changes, so I definitely encourage you to experiment. So the next thing I want to do, if we look at a full screen preview, notice that it looks pretty good, and I've got the neat fixed background image effect showing up, but it is a little difficult to read photo gallery. Even though it's white and it's showing up, it's still a little difficult to read. So one thing we're going to do is go back to, we'll pull up our element settings, and I'm going to adjust our section background. So to do that, I'll click on the section tab and let's switch back over to the style. And of course, this is where we added our background image, but we're going to use another incredible feature of the Elementor page builder, and that is a background overlay. So we're going to scroll down and we've already set the background image, but we're going to choose the background overlay option. And then we'll select the paintbrush option to turn that on. And then for the color, we'll click on the color box and I'll just select my darkest color. All right, notice how when I did that, the background image got a lot darker. And now it's a lot easier to read. So if I turn it on and off, you can see the difference there. So this is a fantastic feature that you can use to make your text more legible. And this is definitely one of the professional methods that a lot of professional designers use. They adjust different overlay settings. And by the way, you can also choose for your color, you can choose actual colors instead of just going with dark colors and play around with these different options. And notice that you also have, I'll minimize the color option by selecting the box. You also have this opacity setting. So when you turn this all the way up, it's literally going to be 100% that color. If we bump it down to 50% like it was, so it's going to be 50% visible and it's going to show the image underneath it. So you can play around with the opacity settings and you can play around with the different colors. I'm going to use 50% opacity with the dark color from our color palette. I think that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and save the changes that we made to our media page so far. And then we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. And you can see all of those changes, of course, are taking effect. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create our video section underneath the photo gallery section. And for this particular example, I don't want the video section to have the same background image that we have for our photo gallery. So to do that, we're going to go back to the back end. And since we don't want the same background image to appear for our video section, I need to create a new section. If I added the video heading and the video itself to this section, of course, it would have the same section background and it would just appear below the image gallery. But we're going to add a different background. So we're just going to create a new section by clicking on Add New Section. And then we'll come down and click on the one column layout since that's the option that I want. So now we have this new section created here. And then I'm going to come up and make a duplicate copy of this heading element. And to do that, I'll hover over it and click on the middle blue icon. And then I can click, hold, and drag on this pencil icon to move this element, and I'll release it in this new section. Now, of course, we can't see it because the text color is the same as this white background color. So I'm going to click on the pencil icon. And that's going to display this heading element settings here on the left. and you can see right now it says photo gallery. But before I change the text, I'm going to click on the style tab and make the text color a different color so I can see it. So I'll click on the color box, and we're going to use dark text because dark text is going to work really well on a light background, and I do want to keep the background white in this particular case. So we'll leave this set as it is, and we'll switch back to the content tab. I'll select what's there and just type in video, and you can see this change take effect here. Now to add our video, we're going to come back up and click on the Elements button to pull up a list of all of our elements, and I'll find the video element. I've got it right here. I'll click, hold, and drag and move that underneath the video heading and release. And now we've got all these video options to work with. Now first of all, the video type, you can choose YouTube or Vimeo videos, and we're going to be using a YouTube video, so I'll leave it set to that. And then for the link, all we need to do is select what's there and delete it. And then we're going to open a new tab, and we're going to go, I'll leave this page. We're going to go to YouTube, and I've actually got a URL that I'm going to copy and paste for the video that I'm going to use. And just so you know, you can access this video. I've got the link in the PDF guide, the free PDF guide you can download. So this is the video that we're going to use, but you would just find whatever video on YouTube or whatever video on Vimeo that you wanted to add, and you would copy the URL by selecting it, and then we're going to go back and we're going to paste it here where it says link. And that's going to add the video. If I scroll down, you can see. And now we've got several different options. We're going to leave the aspect ratio set to 16:9. And then you can choose if you want the video to start playing automatically when the page loads. I do not, so I'll leave it set to no. I want to hide suggested videos. And for player control, I'm going to leave that to show. But for player title and action, that's going to refer to this section up here, the text, and this little icon. I'm going to turn this to hide. And now you can see that it's no longer there. So one more thing I want to do, let's view the full screen preview. It looks pretty good as it is, but one neat little trick you can do is add a shadow effect. So we're going to bring our options back up, and we're going to switch to the Advanced tab. And of course, we're editing the video options. So we'll click on the Advanced tab, and we're going to come down and click on this background and border option. And right here next to box shadow, it's turned off by default. If we select yes, that's going to add a box shadow. And you do have some settings. You can adjust the color and all of these settings, but I happen to like the default look. So now if we view the full screen preview, you can see that we have this really nice, very subtle box shadow. And I just think that adds an element of professionalism to the site. So let's come back to our options and go ahead and save the page. And now we'll view the front end of our site, and we'll refresh the page. And now you can see we have our media page complete with our photo gallery and our video. And of course, your users could hover over the video and click the play icon, and that would play the video. All right, the next thing we're going to do is add content to the Contact Us page. So I'm going to click on that to open it up in the front end. And then we'll go back to the back end. And real quick, I do want to point out that sometimes when you stay logged into your WordPress backend for a while, say overnight, and then you come back to work on your site, you may notice that the changes you're making to the Elementor page builder, when you click on the Save button, they may not actually change. And if that happens, just refresh this page builder page, or you may even need to log out of your WordPress backend and log back in. So I just wanted to point that out, but we're going to exit out by clicking on the X, and we're going to click on Go to Dashboard. And we're going to go to Pages, click on All Pages, and go ahead and click on the Contact Us page to open that up in the page editor. And then, of course, we need to set up our page options to have 100% control over our content area. So we're going to scroll down, and we're going to click on, of course, Content No Sidebars, and then we'll scroll down and check the full width content and content title boxes, and then come up and click on Update. Then let's click on Edit with Elementor to pull up the Elementor page builder. All right, and the first thing we're going to do is add a section, and it's going to be a 2-column section. So we're going to click on Add New Section. And of course, we could choose the 2-column option to create our 2-column section, but I'm going to hover over one of the columns and click on Section and delete it. Click on Delete, and I just want to show you, if we click on Add New Section, just as a review, you can choose a 1-column option, and you could always hover over your section and click on Column and then the addition symbol, and this would add another column. So now that we've got our 2 columns created, I'm going to set our section background to be the dark color from our color palette. So I'll click on the Section tab, and that's going to pull up the section settings here on the left. And of course, we're going to stick with the boxed content width and the default height setting. That way our section will expand to automatically contain all of the content that we add to it. But to change our background color, we're going to click on the Style tab, and then we'll click on the paintbrush icon and then click on the color box, and we're going to choose the dark color that we added to our color palette, so just click on that. The next thing we're going to do is add our column headings, so I'm going to click on the element button to pull up all of our elements, and then I'll click, hold, and drag this heading element into the first column and release. And I'll select the text that's there, and this heading is going to be called Contact Us, so I'll type that in. And then of course I'm going to switch to the Style tab, and we're going to click on the text color box and make this text white. And then we'll click on the color box to minimize that. And then for typography, we'll click where it says default, change it to custom. And then next to font family, we're going to click on default and change this to the Amatica SC font. So I'll type that in, and then I'll click on that option. And then we'll come up in the size box and type in 68, because that's the font size that I want. All right, and then the next thing I'm going to do is duplicate this heading element by clicking on the middle blue button here when I hover over it. And then I'll click, hold, and drag on this pencil icon and drag this over to the second column and release it, just like that. And then I'll click on the pencil icon for the second heading, and I'm going to change the title to Our Office, so I'll just type that in. All right, and I do want to center these, so I'm going to click on the center option, and I'll do the same with this one by clicking on the pencil icon, and I'll center it like that. And we're not going to use links, so that's why I left the links blank. But of course, if you did want these headings to be clickable links to another page, you could just copy and paste a URL and place there. The next thing we're going to do is add an image of Our Office underneath the Our Office heading here. So to do that, we'll click on the Elements button. And I'm going to find the image element right here, and I'll click, hold, and drag and release that underneath the heading. And then we need to find our image, and I've got it on my computer, so I'm going to click on the box here. And we're going to upload the file, and I'll click on Select Files. And I've got it here in a folder, and this is an image that I got from unsplash.com, and I've already resized it with Pixlr to 1280 pixels wide. And I'm going to click on Open. And then we'll click on Insert Media, and that's going to add our photo. Now for the image size, I suggest going with the full option, and we're going to leave it centered for now. And I'm not going to use a caption, but you could feel free to experiment with that. And also, if you did want this image to be a clickable link, you could click where it says None and choose Custom URL, and then you could paste in the destination URL, but we're going to leave this to None because I don't want it to be a clickable link. And then switch to the Style tab. And I want to point out that since we chose the full image size option, we can adjust this size option, and that's going to make our image however big we wanted it to be. Now, if we go to 100, it's just going to expand and fill up the entire width of the column that it's in. You can also play with the opacity settings. We're going to leave it as it is. And for hover animation, you can play with these options as well. And just to show you an example, if I select the grow option, now when I hover over it, you're going to get that animation effect. So you definitely might want to experiment with that, especially if your images are links to other pages, but I'm going to leave that to none. And then for the box shadow, you can turn this option on just like we did for our video box shadow. But since we have a dark background here, the box shadow effect's not going to show up near as much, so I'm just going to leave it off. And then, of course, if you selected a caption or if you typed in a caption, you would be able to adjust your caption settings by clicking on this box. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add some text underneath our image here. So to do that, we'll pull up our list of elements by clicking on the element icon. And I'm going to use the text editor, so I'll click, hold, and drag and release that underneath this image. And then I'm going to come up and click on the Style tab. And first of all, I'm going to change the text color by clicking the color box. And we're going to be using white text, so I'll select that option. And then I am going to center the text, so I'll click on the center button, and you can see that the text is now white and centered. And then if I switch back to the Content tab, I can select the text that's in place by default and delete it. And I'm going to copy and paste some text in line by line. Press Enter. Alright, so now if I scroll down, you can see that we've added all of our text, but notice how the line height, the line spacing between each line is quite large. So I'm going to switch over to the Style tab, and where it says Typography, I'm going to click on Default and change that to Custom. Now for the font family, we're going to leave that to the default option because this is actually body text, and we set up our body text font to be the Open Sans. We did that earlier in the video when we set up our global font settings. So I'm going to leave the font family set to default, but this line height option, I'm going to click on the box and just type in 1. And then when I do that, watch how the line height shrinks a little bit over here, just like that. So we're going to use a line height of 1. Now, the next thing I want to do is just give you a reminder of how to rearrange your different elements. If we wanted to move our image underneath our text here, we could hover over the image and click and hold this pencil icon, and we could drag it down and release it underneath our text. But notice that we don't even have the option to release it under our text right now. So I'm going to release, and of course that did not move, but what you would do in this case is do it in the reverse way. You would move this text above the image and it would have the same effect. So we can click, hold, and drag on the pencil icon for the text and release it above the image just like that. But we're going to move this back down and release it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is add a contact form underneath our Contact Us heading. So first of all, let's click on the Save button to save all the changes that we've made so far. All right, and then we're going to go back to the back end and we're going to download a plugin. So click on the X button here and click on Go to Dashboard. And we're going to go hover over Plugins and click on Add New. And then we're going to come over to the top right search box and type in Contact Form 7. And this plugin in the upper left quadrant here is the one we want. So hover over it and click on Install Now. And then click on Activate. All right, so to set up our contact form, we're going to hover over Contact that's now appearing in our left sidebar area here, and then click on Contact Forms. And then click on the Contact Form 1 that will automatically be created. All right, so the Contact Form plugin automatically creates your form for you, but you might want to click on the Mail tab, and this is where you would change the email address where your contact form submissions will be sent to. And by default, it will take on the admin email that you put in when you first installed WordPress. But if you needed to change this, you could select the email and delete it and replace it with a new address, and then you would scroll down and click on Save. And then to add the contact form to our website, what we're going to do is copy this short code that's appearing here. So I'm just going to click on that, and then that's going to select all of it, including the brackets. Be sure and get the brackets, and then we'll copy. And then we're going to go back to Pages, All Pages, and we're going to open up the contact page again, and then we'll click on Edit with Elementor. And then we're going to click on the element button to make sure our list of elements are appearing, and we're going to actually find the shortcode element. And we'll scroll down and we've got it right here. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag and release the shortcode element underneath our Contact Us heading. And then all we have to do is paste in our shortcode. So I can paste that in, the one that we just copied. And now you can see we have our contact form in place. Now notice that it doesn't look very good. So first of all, we can't read the text, and this is because the text color for the contact form, the text color is blending in with our background. So first of all, we're going to set a background for our contact form. So with the shortcode settings, we're going to switch to the Advanced tab, so click on that. And then we're going to click on the Background and Border option. And then under Background and Border, under Background Type, we're going to click on the paintbrush icon. And then click on the color box, and then we're just going to click on the white color, and that's going to give us a background. So now we can see our text much better. And also notice that there isn't a lot of space above the text on your contact form, or on the left or the right. If you look at our box here, it's right up against the edge. And if I scroll down, also on the bottom below the button, we don't have any space. So we're going to adjust our padding settings, and this is going to be found under the shortcode settings under the Advanced tab. We're going to click back on the Element Style option. And right here under padding, we're going to type in a number. So I'll click in the box and we're going to type in the number 10. And what that's going to do, it's going to fill in 10 in all of our different boxes here. And if you notice on the right, we now have spacing on the top, the left, the right, and also on the bottom. And I'm not sure why we have so much spacing on the bottom, but I happen to like the look of that. So we're just not going to worry about that. Now, this is a good time to point out that a lot of your different settings will have pixel options, what's called M options, or percentage options, and we're using exclusively pixel options in this tutorial. So I'm going to select that, and I need to type in 10 again. And also notice that because this option is checked, that when we type in 10 in one of the boxes, it's going to be 10 in all of the boxes. So if you wanted different values for your top, right, bottom, and left, you could uncheck this box and then you could type in different values for each of these options. But I like the even look that we have, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now I want to point out a little bug that I've noticed with the shortcode element. First of all, I'm going to scroll up. Now notice that we have this apply option showing up for the shortcode element, and of course we also have the save button. Now you don't have to click on apply for your changes to take effect. You can click on the save. In fact, you have to click on the save button for your changes to take effect and show up on the front end of your site. Now, so I suggest not clicking apply. There's no reason to. And what happens when you do, watch my heading fonts. When I click on apply, the page is going to reload. And notice that my heading fonts are no longer in place. Now, what's interesting is when we save the page by clicking on save and go back and view the front end of our site and refresh the page, notice that our heading fonts are actually correct. So it's only in the preview mode that this does this. So if you do accidentally click on the apply button and then of course save your changes, you can exit out and go back to your dashboard and then just reload the Elementor page builder, and your fonts will show up correctly. So I just wanted to point that out to you in case you were concerned about that happening. And I do want to point out that, of course, your users would be able to fill out this contact form and send that, and it would send a copy of the form submission to the email address that you specified in the contact form settings. Now, if you aren't seeing those emails show up in your inbox, be sure to check your spam folder. So the next thing we're going to do is add a Google map underneath our 2-column section here. And since I want to create a new section with a new section background and not use this same dark background, we do need to create a new section by clicking the button here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose the 1-column option since I only want 1 column. And then the next thing we're going to do is come up and duplicate a copy of one of our headings here. So I'll hover over the Contact Us heading and click on Duplicate. And then I'll click, hold, and drag the pencil icon and release that into our new section. And of course, we need to click on the pencil icon over our heading here and change the text color so that it's visible. So I'll click on the Style tab now, and then click on the text color box. And since we have a light white background, I'm going to keep it that way. We want to have dark text, so I'll click on the dark option there. And then the next thing I'm going to do is switch back over to the Content tab. And first of all, I'm going to align this to the left, and then I'm going to change the text. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is add our Google Map underneath our heading here. So I'm going to click on the element icon, and then I'm going to find the Google Maps element, and I'll click, hold, and drag this in and release it underneath our heading. And then all you need to do is select the address that's in place and type in your address. And the Google Map is automatically going to upload to show your location. And then you have a couple of different settings here. The zoom level will determine how zoomed in your map is going to be. So I'm going to change this to 13 to zoom in a little bit more. That looks pretty good. And then your height, you can adjust this as well. For example, we could change it to 500 pixels. And if we scroll down, you can see that our map is a little bit taller. But I like the look of 300, so I'm going to replace it with the original 300. And then prevent scroll is on by default. I'm hovered over the map right now, and I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse, and you can see it's not affecting the zoom level of the map. If I change this to no, now when I hover over the map and use the scroll wheel, you can see that I can control how zoomed in I am. Also, having the prevent scroll set to no, your users will be able to use the options here on the map. So let's go ahead and save the change. And then we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. All right, now we have our map in place. All right, the next thing we're going to do is add content to our About page. So I'm going to open that up in the front end. And then let's go back to the back end, and we're going to click on the X and then click on Go to Dashboard. And we're going to go to Pages, click on All Pages, and then we'll click on the About page to open that up in the page editor. And then, of course, we're going to make our adjustments here to get complete control with the Elementor Page Builder plugin. So we're going to choose Content No Sidebars, and we'll check the box next to Full Width Content and Content Title and come up and update the page. And then the next thing we need to do is click on Edit with Elementor, and that's going to launch the Elementor Page Builder. And the first thing I want to do to our About page is add a new section. So I'll click on Add New Section. And this is going to be a 1-column section, and it's just going to have a background image, and it's going to have a big heading. So first I'm going to add the background image by hovering over the section and click on the Section tab. That's going to pull up my section settings, and then I'll click on Style. And for background type, I'm going to click on the paintbrush icon. And then instead of choosing a color, I'm going to click on the addition symbol under Image. And then I've got this file on my computer, so I'm going to click on Upload Files and click on Select Files. And I've got this image already downloaded in my background images folder, and it's already resized to 1600 pixels wide. So I'm going to click on Open. And then I'm going to click on Insert Media. All right, and we're going to come back and adjust these background settings here in just a moment. But now that we've got our background image added, I'm going to add our title. So to add our title to the section, I'm going to click on my Elements button, and then I'll drag the heading over and release that. And then I'm going to type in who we are. And notice that it's barely legible because it's this blue color right now. So I'm going to change that by clicking on the Style tab. And next to text color, click on the box, and we're going to make it white. And then we'll click on the box to minimize that. And then typography, of course, we're going to click default and change it to custom. And we're going to make the font family by clicking on default. We're going to type in Amatica SC, and then we'll select that. And then we'll come up to the size option, and in the box, I'm just going to type in 114 to make this very large. And then let's click back over to the Content tab, and we're going to center the text. All right. Now, first of all, notice that our background image is not very tall. Well, this is because if we access our section settings by clicking on the Section tab, and then here on the left under the Layout section settings, of course, we're using a boxed width, which we want, but also our height option is set to the default option. And the default option for the height, for the section height setting, is going to make it to where your section is only as big as it needs to be to contain the content within it. So since we only have the heading element, it's only going to be as big as it needs to be to contain the heading element. What we're going to do is change the default height setting to min height, and then I'm going to leave it set to 400 pixels. And now you can see we have a lot more space above and below our header. So the next thing we're going to do is adjust our section background by clicking on the Style tab. And then, of course, this is where we added our background image, but we're going to adjust some of the options. So we'll start out with the attachment. Notice when I scroll, we get this effect, but I'm going to change the attachment to fixed, and now we get this effect. And then I'm also going to show more of the image by changing the size to cover. And then if we view the full screen preview mode, you can see we get this effect. This looks pretty good, but I want to bump the image up a little bit so we see more of the subject of our background image. So let's bring up our options, and we're going to change the position to bottom center. And now when we view the full screen preview, you can see we get this effect. All right, so the next thing you'll notice is our heading is barely legible. So we need to adjust our background image to be darker so we can see that heading. So let's pull that up. And we're going to add a background overlay. So we'll click on that, and we're going to click on the paintbrush icon, and then we're going to click on the color box. And for the background overlay, we're going to make it the dark color from our color palette. So I'll click on that. And actually, I'm going to drag this all the way down to the bottom left to make it even darker. And then I'm going to bump the opacity up to 0.6 so that it's even darker than it is. And that looks pretty good right there. So let's go ahead and save the change. And let's view the front end of our site and refresh the page. Now we've got our heading added. Let's go back to the back end. And the next thing we're going to do is add a new section underneath our heading here. And it's going to be a 2-column section. And one of the columns is going to have a white background, and the other column is actually going to have a blue background. So let's start out by clicking on Add New Section. And then I'll come down and choose the 2-column option. And first I'm going to redistribute the weight and make this 80% of the width for the first column by click holding and dragging on the side there. And then I'm going to click on the Elements button. And first I'll click hold and drag the heading element into this column and release. And I'm just going to type in About Us. And then I'll click on the Style tab. I'm going to change the text color to the dark color and click on the box again to minimize that. In typography, I'm going to click on Custom, and for font family, I'm going to click on Default and type in Cabin, since this is the font that I want. All right, and I'm going to leave all the other options set to the default. The next thing we're going to do is add some text underneath the About Us title, so I'll click on the Elements button again, and I'll click hold and drag the text editor in place and release that. And then I'm going to delete what's here, and I've got some text I'm going to copy and paste one paragraph at a time. Paste that in, press enter. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on my Style tab, and next to Text Color, I'm going to click on the box there and choose the lighter dark gray that we have. And I'm going to switch back over to the content. And to make any text a clickable link within this visual editor here, you can select the text. So for example, I'm going to select Generate Press, and I'm going to make it a link to the Generate Press website. So I've got that text selected. I'm going to open a new tab and open up the Generate Press website. So you're going to go to whatever page you want to be the URL, and then select the URL and copy it, and we'll go back. And with this text selected, I'm going to click the link icon here, and then I'm just going to paste in that link and click on this apply button, and that's automatically going to make Generate Press a link, and then I can just click out to get out of that option. Now, of course, I can always select that text again and click on the X to remove that link, but I'm going to keep that, of course. And notice that by default, the link is the orange color from our color palette, and it's the same as our links down here. And this is something we set up earlier in the video, but just to remind you, I'm going to click on the X here, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard, but I'm going to do it in another tab. So I'll control click and click on Open Link in New Window. And we set up our link colors by going to our theme options under Appearance, Customize, and click on Colors. And right here, this is where we set up our link color and the link color visited. And by the way, I recommend using the same color for your link color as you do for your link color visited. And you can see we have the dark color set for our hover. So if we go back, I can exit out of this now. If we go back, notice that it's the same thing. We've got this orange color, and when I hover, it's that dark color. If you wanted to change the link color, you could select the link and then click on this toolbar toggle icon, and then click on the A icon, and then click on Custom. And right here, you could replace the 6 zeros with a custom hex code. But we're going to leave the link colors set as they are, and then I'm going to make one more link over here by clicking, and then I'll scroll down and select the Elementor text. And then I'm going to click on the chain link icon, and then come up and open the Elementor website. And I'll just copy the URL and come in and paste that in. And then I'll click on the apply button. And now you can see we've got both of our links. Now the next thing I want to do is add a testimonial underneath our text element here. So to do that, I'm going to click on the element icon, and then I'm going to find the testimonial element. I've got it right here. I'm going to click, hold, and drag and release that in place. And I'm having trouble putting it where I want it underneath our text. So I'm just going to release it above the text. And then I'm going to hover over the text and click, hold, and drag the pencil icon and move the text above it. That way I have the order that I want there. And then I'm going to hover over the testimonial, click on the pencil icon to make sure you've got your element settings pulled up. And first I'm going to replace the testimonial that's in by deleting it. And I'm going to copy and paste some text that I've got for my testimonial. And then the next thing we need to do is add our testimonial image. And first of all, we need to crop the image. And I've got an image downloaded from Unsplash, but your testimonial image needs to be a perfect square, so the height and width need to have a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're going to go back and open up Pixlr in a new tab. And then scroll down, and under Pixlr Editor, we're going to launch the web app again. And then click on Open Image from Computer, and we'll find the image. I've got this that I downloaded from Unsplash. I'm going to click on Open. And then make sure the crop tool is selected by default. It should be. It's this upper left tool. And then next to Constraint, where it says No Restriction, we're going to change this to Aspect Ratio. And it should be 1-to-1 by default, but make sure that's the case. And then click, hold, and drag to make your crop selection. And then you can release, and then you can click, hold, and drag to move the selection. And then press Enter on your keyboard to make the crop. And then we'll save the image by coming up to File, click on Save. Give it a title. Click on OK. And I'll just save this to my desktop and click on Save. And then we'll go back to the back end, and on our image box, we're going to click on that, and then click on Upload Files, select Files. We'll find the file on our desktop and click on Open. And then click on Insert Media, and now you can see we've got our testimonial image in place. Now the next thing we're going to do is next to name, we're going to change this to Jane Doe, and you can see that take effect. And then we'll leave the job set to designer. And then let's switch to the Style tab. And first of all, the content is going to refer to the main testimonial here that we put in right here. So we're going to change this color to the dark color from our color palette. and I'll click on the color box to minimize that. And then typography, I'll click default, change it to custom, and next to family, we're going to search for Amatica SC. And then I'm going to bump the size up to 39, so I'll type in 39 in this box, and you can see that change take effect. And then let's come up and click on the Content tab to minimize those options. And then we'll click on the Image tab to bring up our image options, and I'm going to bump the size up to 128. You can see our image is larger now. And then for the name, I'm going to click on that tab and change the text color and make that dark. And then we'll do the same for job. I'll click on the text color and actually make this the lighter gray from our color palette. All right, so now we've got our testimonial in place. And one thing we can do to make this a little more professional is add a graphic above the testimonial, a quote icon. And the Elementor plugin includes over 400 icons that you can use. So to access those, we're going to click on the element icon, and we're going to click, hold, and drag this icon element over and release that above our testimonial. And it's going to be the star by default. We're going to come over to the icon settings and click on the star. And you can browse through all these different icons. You have, like I said, over 400 options to choose from. But I'm just going to search for the quote icon, and then I'll use the quote right icon. I'll click on that. And then you could make your icon a clickable link to another website by pasting in a URL here. But I'm going to leave it as it is, and you could align it left or right, but I'm going to leave it to the center. And then switch to the Style tab. And next to primary color, I'm going to change the color of the icon by clicking the color box, and I'm going to make it darker blue. You can see that take effect there. And then I'll click on the color box to minimize that. And then you can adjust the size. I'm going to leave it as it is. And also you have this icon hover setting. If you click on that, you could change the hover color and add an animation. And you might want to do this if you made your icon a link to another page, but again, I'm just going to leave mine as it is. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to click on Save to save these changes. And then we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. All right, so now you can see we've got our content in place in our first column. The next thing we're going to do is add content to our second column here that we've already created. And remember, this column is going to have a blue background. So to set that up, let's go back to the back end. And first of all, I've already created a 2-column section here, and the first column has a width of 80% because we resized it, and the second column has a width of 20%. Now, this smaller column is the one I want to have the blue background. So first of all, if I clicked on this section tab, that's going to pull up the section settings here on the left. Now, these are the same settings that would appear if I hovered over this column and clicked on the section tab, because both of these columns are in the same section. So if I wanted to change the section background like we've done before, I would click on the Style tab and then click on the paintbrush icon and choose a color. Now, if I did that, if I made it blue, then of course this is going to refer to the entire section. Well, that's not what I want. I just want this one column to have a blue background. So let's go back to the settings. And I'm going to turn this off by clicking that. And then what I'm going to do is hover over this column again, and I can click on the column tab. And now I have this new set of column settings that I can use. So what we're going to do is create a background for the column, but something to note is that even after we set a background color for the column, that won't actually show up until we have some element in place. So I'm just going to drag a temporary element in place. I'll click on the Elements tab. And then I'll just drag a heading in, and we'll delete this in a moment. But now that we have something in place there, I can hover over this column and click on the Column tab again. And that's going to bring up these column settings for this column. And now I can add a background by clicking on the paintbrush icon and then click on Color. And then I'll choose the blue from my color palette. And now you can see we have a blue column. So it's going to expand automatically to be as long as this section. So you can see that it goes all the way down to the bottom of this section. And of course, it's 20% of the width because that is the width that we specified earlier. Now I'm going to hover over this element and delete it by clicking the blue X button. And then I'll click on Delete. And of course, our blue column background is going to show up again as soon as we add additional elements. So let's click on the element button here, and we're going to find the icon box element. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag this and release it into this column. And you can see we've got our blue background back. Now, the icon box has 3 different components. You have the icon, and then you have a title and a description. So if we come over to the left to our icon box element settings, First of all, the view mode that we're going to use is the default mode. So make sure that's selected and then choose icon. I'm going to click on the star. And again, there are over 400 icons you can look through, but I'm just going to search for the hourglass icon and I'll choose this option. And when I click on that, you'll see the hourglass update on the right here. And then I'm going to replace the title with speed. I'll type that in, and then I'm going to select the description, delete it, and copy and paste another description in place. All right, so I've got my 3 elements in place, and then you also have this link option if you wanted the icon or the title to be a clickable link. You could paste in a link to another web page there, but I'm going to leave it blank. You can also play with these positioning icons. I like the look of center. And let's come up and click on the Style tab. And first of all, we're on the Icon tab here, and we're going to change the color to white by clicking the color box and selecting white, and you'll see that update. All right, and then I'll click on the color box to minimize that. And then the icon spacing, notice how there's a little bit of space between the title and the icon. I'm going to change this to 0 by selecting it and type in 0. And I like that look a little bit better. And then the icon size, I'm going to move this down a little bit, and you can use this slider, but I'm just going to type in the box 33 to make the icon that size. And then you can play with this rotate option on your own. You also have this icon hover setting. If you click on that tab, you can change the color of your icon when you hover over it. And you also have this animation option. I'm going to leave that to the default setting. And then this content tab, I'm going to click on that. And this is where we have the title and description settings. So first of all, for the title, I'm going to click on the title color box and make the title white. All right. And then I'll click on the color box again. And I'm also going to click on the typography settings for the title and change it from default to custom. And then I'll come down and choose the font family by clicking on default and make this title cabin by typing in cabin. And then I'll click on that. And then notice how there's quite a bit of space between the description and the title. I'm going to adjust the title spacing by clicking in the box and typing in 0. And when I do, watch what happens. You'll see that that bumps up the description. And then let's come down, and under the description settings here, we're going to change the description color to white by clicking on the color box. Scroll down and click on the white option. The next thing I want to do is create 5 additional icon boxes underneath this one, and to save myself some time, I'm just going to duplicate this one 5 additional times, so I'll do that real quickly. And now this way, all of these icon boxes have the exact same settings, so I can just go back in and replace the icon and the title and the description with what I want. So for the second one, I'm going to click on the pencil icon when I hover over it, and I'll replace the icon with the building. Click on that option. And then I'm going to replace the title and the description. And I'm going to do the exact same steps with these additional icon boxes, and I'll do that off camera for the sake of time. Alright, now I've got the other icon box elements set up, so for your convenience I've listed the icons that I'm using so you can easily find them. Now let's go ahead and save the changes. And we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. Alright, now you can see we've got our About page complete. Alright, we're finally at a point where we can add content to our home page, so I'm going to open that up in the front end. And then we'll go back to the back end and we'll exit out of the page builder by clicking on the X and go to dashboard. And then let's go to pages, click on all pages. And we're going to open up the welcome page, which is our front page, by clicking on it. And then first we'll set up our page settings. Scroll down and choose the content no sidebars option, the full width content, and the content title option. And then we'll come up and update to save those changes. And then we'll click on edit with Elementor. The first thing we're going to do is create a full screen background image. So to do that, let's click on add new section and we'll choose the one column option. And then let's access our section settings by hovering over the section and clicking on the section tab. And first of all, let's add our background image by clicking on the Style tab, and then we'll click on the paintbrush icon, and then we'll click on the box underneath image. And then of course we're going to upload the file from our computer and then click on select files. And I've got this file right here. I'm going to click on it, and then of course it's already resized to 1600 pixels wide. I'm going to click on open, and then click on insert media. Alright, so now we've got our background image in place. Before we adjust our background image settings, let's go back to the layout tab of our section settings. And we're going to change the height option from the default to fit to screen. And of course, now we've got a large background image that's just as big as our computer monitor. So let's switch back to the Style tab and adjust some of our image options. First of all, for the size, I'm going to change this to cover. And that looks good. And then I'm going to change the background position to bottom center. And then we'll leave these other options as they are for now. The next thing we're going to do is add a heading to our section. So let's click on the elements icon. And then we'll click, hold, and drag the heading element in place and release that. And then I'm going to select the text and delete it and copy and paste some text in place. The next thing I want to do is center the text. So I'll click on that option. And then let's switch to the Style tab. And I'm going to change the text color by clicking on the color box. And I'll select the white option. And then I'll click on the color box again to exit out of that option. And then the typography, we're going to click on default and choose custom. And then now that we've got our typography options pulled up, we're going to change the font family to Amatica SC. I'll type that in and select that option. And then let's adjust the size. I'm just going to type in the box 86 to make our heading much bigger. The next thing I want to do, notice how our heading element is centered on the screen. This is because if we switch back, first we're going to have to access our section settings by clicking on the section tab again. Under the Layout tab, notice how the column position is set to middle. This is the default option. We're going to change it from middle to top, and that's going to bump that up to the top where we want it. And then the next thing you'll notice is that the text is a little bit difficult to read, so we're going to make our background image darker. So again, we're going to access our section settings by hovering over the section and clicking on the Section tab, which we already have those options pulled up. Let's switch back to the Style tab, and we're going to scroll down and click on Background Overlay, and then we'll choose the paintbrush icon, and then we're going to click on the color box, and we'll select the dark color from our color palette, and then I'll click, hold, and drag this to make it even darker. And then I'm going to leave the opacity set to 0.5. That looks pretty good. So the next thing we'll do is add another heading underneath this one, and it's going to be the same font and the same font color. So I'm just going to duplicate this heading by hovering over it and clicking on the blue duplicate icon. And then what we'll do is access this heading settings by clicking on the pencil icon. And we're just going to change the text to Mark Twain. So I'll type that in. And then I'll switch to the Style tab, and we're going to make this much smaller. I'll select the font and type in 45. All right, so now we've got our headings in place. Let's go ahead and save the change. And then we'll access the front end of our site and refresh the page. All right, so now we've got a good start. Now we're going to start getting really advanced with some of the functionality options that you can use with the Elementor Page Builder plugin, because the next thing we're going to do is add 2 buttons underneath our Mark Twain heading here. And I want the buttons to be side by side. So let's go back to the back end and figure out how we're going to do this. So first of all, if you recall, we've got a 1-column section here. So if I just access my elements and then find the button element and then click, hold, and drag that in place, that's going to put it underneath the heading. And then if I do it again, because we want 2 buttons, and put it underneath this one, that's just going to stack the buttons one on top of the other because we only have 1 column. So what we need to have is 2 columns. So I'm going to delete these buttons. Now, we can't just hover over our section and then click on the column tab and add another column, because when I do that, that's going to create 2 columns for the entire section, and I want both of my headings here to take up just 1 column. So that's not going to work. So let's go ahead and hover over this column, click column, and then click the X to delete that column. Now we can't add a new section, and we can't choose a 2-column section because this section's not going to have the same background image as this one. So we can't do that. Let's delete that one by clicking on section and the X button. So what we can do with Elementor, this is again where you can get really advanced, and this is an amazing feature of the Elementor Page Builder plugin. You can create sections within sections, and the way you do that is by using the columns element. So make sure you're accessing your elements by clicking on the element icon there. And then we're going to click, hold, and drag the columns element in underneath our headings and release that. And by default, that's going to create 2 columns within this section within this bigger section. So to delete columns, we can of course hover over them and click on the column tab and then click on the X and delete. To add additional columns to the section within the section, you can hover over it and then click on column and click the addition symbol. So we want 2 columns. So now that we've got a section within a section, you're also going to get this additional section tab. Now I want to point out that if we click on that section tab, this is referring to only this section within the larger section. So now that we've accessed this section's settings, if we change the background color by clicking on the Style tab and the paintbrush icon and then the color box and just made it blue, it's only referring to this one section. So I just wanted to point that out there. Whereas this section tab is still covering this entire section. So this section tab is where we added our background image. So with this section activated, I'm going to just clear this background out. And we're going to go back to our element settings and we're going to grab the button element again, click, hold, and drag that and release that into this first column. And the button element is also very robust. You can control just about every option. So we're going to start filling these out. First of all, for the type, we're going to leave that set to default. And then for the text, you can see by default it says click me. I'm going to type in learn about us. And then the link, we're going to replace this pound symbol by deleting it. And I want this button to be a clickable link to my About page, so I'm going to go back to the front end and I'm going to open my About page up in a new tab. And then I'll open that up and copy the URL and we'll go back and paste that in. The next thing I want to do is align this first button to the right, and that's going to push it to the far right of that column. And we'll leave the size set to small, but I also want to add an icon, so I'm going to click on Select Icon and I'm just going to type in angle because I've already found an icon that I want, this angle right icon. I'll select that. And then that's going to pull up additional icon options. And you can see right now the icon is appearing before the text. I'm going to change that by clicking on before and put it after the text. And then I'm going to add a little bit of icon spacing by typing in 22 here. And that's going to give a little bit of room there. And then let's switch to the Style tab. And first I'm going to make the icon text color white and make sure that it's white by clicking the color box and choosing the white option there. And then we'll minimize that. And then typography, I'm going to click on default, change it to custom. And then next to family, we're going to click on default and type in cabin, since that's the font I want, and I'm going to click on that. And then we're going to adjust the font size by typing in 18 in the box here to make it a little bigger. That looks pretty good. And I also want to add a little bit of letter spacing to give a neat effect here. So I'm going to type in 1.2. That looks pretty good. And then for the button background color, we're going to click on the color box and scroll down, and we're going to make this green by clicking that. And then we'll click on the color box again to minimize the color option. Now for the border radius, if you look at the edges of the button, you'll notice that there's a very slight curve to the edges. If I click on the border radius box where it's above top and type in 0, you'll notice that now you have very sharp edges, so there's no curve in the radius. Now if I type in 30, that's going to put 30 in all of these boxes as long as I have this checked, which it should be by default. And now we have a perfectly rounded border radius. So I'm going to leave it set to 30. And then the next thing we're going to do is adjust our text padding. And if we click on the top box and just type in 15, what this is going to do, it's going to put 15 pixels of padding above, below, to the left, and to the right of my button. I want to adjust this to where I have different numbers in these boxes, so I'm going to uncheck the link values together box. And for the top, I'm going to leave that to 15 and 15 for the bottom, but for the right, I'm going to type in 60, and for the left, I'm going to do the same. All right, I think that's a good look for the button. And then we're going to click on the button hover option, and if you wanted to change your button background color, for example, when you hover over the button, you could click on that color box and we could try blue, for example, and that would make your button blue when you hover, just like that. I'm going to leave it set to the default option so that it doesn't change colors, but I am going to choose an animation option. I'm going to click on none and change it to grow. So now when I hover over the button, you can see that we get this grow effect. So this button looks pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is create our additional button by duplicating this one. So I'll hover over it and click on the duplicate button. And then I'll hover over this copy and click, hold, and drag the pencil icon and move it to the right column here and release. All right, and then to access this button settings, I'm going to hover over it and click on the pencil icon. And then we're going to fill out some of these options. So I'm going to change the text to read our blog. And then I'll select the link and delete it and go back to the front end and open our blog page. And then we'll copy the URL and go back and paste that in place. And then we're going to align this button to the left, just like that. And I'm going to remove the icon by clicking on the X there. And then let's come up to the Style tab, click on that. We're going to scroll down and we're going to change the background color by clicking on the color box. And we're going to make this button blue. So I'll select that and then click on the color box again. And we're going to leave these additional settings as they are. And I'll click on the button hover. And this time I'm going to turn off the animation. So I'll click on grow and change it to none. So now we have this button in place. Let's go ahead and save our changes. And then we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. All right, now we've got our buttons in place. And of course I can click on them and be taken to the pages that they link to. The next thing I want to do is add a divider underneath our buttons here, and this is just an easy way to add an embellishment to your site to make it look even more professional. So let's go back to the back end, and we'll click on the element icon here to pull up our elements. And we're going to find the divider element. I've got it right here. I'll click, hold, and drag, and then we can release this in the original one column that we created when we created our section. So I'll do that. And it's a little difficult to see right now. We're going to make the color white by coming over to the divider settings and click on the color box, and we'll click on the white option. Click on the color box again to minimize that. Now you can see our divider. Now let's go ahead and change the style from solid to dotted. I just think this looks a little better. And then we're going to leave the weight to 1, but if you wanted a thicker divider, you could adjust this option. But we're going to leave it to 1. So for the width, I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller, and then we're going to center it by clicking the center button. And then the gap, I'm going to leave that to 15. This is referring to the gap between your buttons and the divider. And if we look at the full screen preview, you can see that it's actually about that small at 15. So I'm going to leave it like that. And then the next thing we're going to do is add 3 icon boxes next to each other underneath our divider. So we can't use the original one column section that we created because that would stack all 3 icon boxes on top of each other. So we need to go back to our elements, and we're going to use another columns element. So we'll click, hold, and drag, and we'll release it underneath our divider. And by default, that's going to create 2 columns. We're going to hover over one of the columns, click on column, and click on the addition symbol to create a 3rd column. So now we've got 3 columns, and this is all another section within the overall bigger section. So now I can add my 3 icon boxes. So let's go back to the elements by clicking on the element icon. And then we'll find the icon box and click, hold, and drag this into the 1st column and release that. And then of course we have the same icon box options that we had when working with this on our About page. So first of all, for the view, I'm going to change this to framed, and that's going to give me a border around the icon. And then I'm going to choose an icon by clicking on star, and I've already got the camera icon picked out, so I'm just going to type that in, and then I'll click on that option. And then for the shape, you do have the option to make your icon a square, so you could choose that and your border would be a square, but I like the look of these circles, so I'm going to stick with that option. And then for the title, I'm going to type in Media Gallery. Then I'll select the text that's there, delete it, and I'll copy and paste some text that I have. All right, and then for the link, this time I do want to make the icon and the title a clickable link to my media page. So I'm going to go back to the front end, and I'm going to click on the media page. Then I'll select the URL, copy that, and go back and paste this into our link box. All right, and now when I hover, you can see that we have this clickable option. And then I'm going to leave the icons centered, and then we'll scroll up, and let's switch to the Style tab. And first of all, the primary color, I'm going to click on the color box and make this white. This refers to the border and the actual icon. I'll click on the color box to minimize that. The secondary color is actually our icon background color. And this is going to be transparent by default, but what I'm going to do is click on the secondary color box, and I'm going to start with the white option. And then I'm going to use the transparency slider to make it mostly transparent, not completely, right about there. And I just really like the look of this. And then we're going to add a completely transparent hover effect in just a moment. But first, let's just minimize this option. And then you can play with the spacing, and for the icon size, we're going to type in 28 to make this icon a little bit smaller. And I like the look of that. And then again, you can play with the padding and rotate options on your own. I do want to point out that the border width refers to our circular border here, and if we type in a larger number, say 10, you're going to get a thicker border, so you can play with that. I'm going to stick with the default by deleting it. And then for the icon hover, let's click on that. We're going to leave everything except the secondary color as it is. We're going to click on the secondary color box, and we're just going to drag the slider all the way down to completely transparent. And now when I hover over the icon, notice that we get this effect, which I think looks pretty neat. So we're going to stick with that. Now for the content settings, we'll click on the content tab. And then first of all, for the title, we're going to make this white by clicking on the title color box. We'll scroll down and click on the white option. And then we'll click on the color box to minimize that. And then for typography, we're going to change this from default to custom. And we'll scroll down and choose, and then for our title, we're going to choose the cabin font. So I'll type in cabin, select that. And you can see we now have the cabin font. And we're going to come up to the size and type in 28, and that's going to make our title much larger. And then we'll scroll down, and the last thing I want to do here with the description, I want to click on the color box and scroll down and make this description white. And you'll see that we now have our first icon box. Now the next thing I want to do is duplicate our icon box 2 more times. Now we could hover over the icon box element and click on the duplicate button here. And that would add an identical copy of this icon box to the same column. And then we could click, hold, and drag on the pencil icon and release that into our second column. Now I also want to point out that you can duplicate entire columns, and we would do that by hovering over the column you want to duplicate, click on the column tab, and then you also have this duplicate column button. So we could click on that, and that's going to add an identical column, including the element within it. So now that we've done that, we have this extra column. So we can just hover over this column, click on the column tab, and we can click on the X and say delete to remove that. So now we've got our additional icon boxes in place. I'm going to go in to each one, hover over it, and click on the pencil icon to bring up the icon box settings. And I'm just going to replace the icon, the title, description, and the link. And I'll do that off camera for the sake of time. Alright, now I've got my additional icon boxes set up, and just so you know, we're using the camera, users, and envelope icons for each of these. And let's go ahead and view the full screen preview mode. And this looks pretty good, and notice of course my hover effect's in place, and also notice that there's a little bit of a space difference between the space we have in between our divider and our icons and the divider and our buttons. We're going to go back and adjust a margin setting for the divider element, so we'll go back to our settings, and I'm going to hover over the divider and click on the blue pencil icon, and then we'll come over and we're going to switch to the advanced tab. And we're going to access the margin top setting. Now if I click here and type in a number, it's going to add that number to all of the boxes. So I'm going to remove that and uncheck this option by clicking on it. And now I can only adjust the top option. I'm going to type in 12. And that's going to add 12 pixels of margin above the divider element. So when we view the full screen preview mode now, you'll see that it looks a little more even. So this looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and come back and save the change. And then we'll view the front end of our site, and we're on the front page. We'll refresh the page. Now we've got our additional content added, and of course I can click on each of these icons or titles to be taken to the page that we link to. Alright, the next thing I want to do is add a new section underneath our top section here, and it's going to have a white background, and we're going to start out by adding a full width heading to the new section. So let's go back to the back end. And then we'll scroll down and we're going to click on Add New Section. And then we'll choose the one column option. And then we'll come up to the top here. And since the new heading that I want to add is going to be very similar to this top heading, I'm just going to duplicate it. So I'll hover over it and click on the duplicate button. Then we'll click, hold, and drag the pencil icon. And we'll come in and drop that in place. And of course you can't see the new heading because the font color is white, just like our background color. So we're going to access our heading settings by clicking on the pencil icon. And then we'll come over here to the left and click on the Style tab. And we're going to change the text color by clicking the box. And we'll select the dark color from our color palette. Click on the box to minimize that. And then now that we can see it, I'm going to reduce the font size by replacing the 86 with 62 to make it a little smaller there. And then we'll switch to the Content tab. And I'll select what's there, delete it. And I've got some additional text that I'll copy and paste in place. Alright, the next thing we'll do is duplicate the second heading. So I'll just hover over it, click on the duplicate button, click, hold, and drag the pencil icon and drop that in place underneath our first heading. And then we'll hover over the new heading, click on the pencil icon, and we'll do the same thing. We'll come over to the Style tab, change the text color to the dark color from our color palette. Click on that to minimize it, and then I'm going to leave the font size to 45 for this one. But let's switch to the Content tab and replace Mark Twain with Theodore Roosevelt. Alright, so that looks good. The next thing I want to do is add 2 columns underneath our heading here, and I want each column to contain 2 different icon box elements. And I want these all to be in the same section with this white background. So what we need to do is go back to our list of elements by clicking on the element icon. And we're going to use another columns element. So we'll click, hold, and drag this in underneath our headings here and release that. And by default, we've got 2 columns. So we're going to leave it as it is. And then we'll switch back to the element tab again. And then we're going to find the icon box, click, hold, and drag that into the first column. All right, and then what we're going to do is come over here on the left and we're going to switch the view to framed. And then for this first icon box, I'm going to change the icon to the trophy, so I'll just type that in. Click on that. And then I'll replace the title with team building, so I'll just type that in, and then I'll select the description, delete it, and I'll copy and paste some text that I've got here. And then I'm not going to use a link for these icons, but I am going to change the icon position to the left. And when I click on that, you'll see that we now have a completely different alignment. We have our icon on the left and then our title and description on the right, which I like that quite a bit. The next thing we're going to do is come up and scroll up to the top, click on the Style tab, and we're going to change the primary icon color by clicking on the color box, and we're going to change it to the orange from our color palette, so I'll click on that. Then click on the color box to minimize that. We'll leave the secondary color to the default so that our background blends in with our section background. And then for the icon spacing, I'm going to reduce this by selecting the 15 and type in 8. And that's going to push our title and description a little closer to the icon, which I like. And then I'll reduce the icon size by typing in 28 in that box. And then we'll scroll down, and we're not going to use a hover effect for this icon, but we are going to adjust our content. So I'll click on the content box. And we're going to change the title to, first of all, the text color is going to be dark, so I'm going to make it the dark from our color palette. Then I'll click on that to minimize that option. And then we'll change the typography default setting to the custom setting. And then we're going to choose the cabin font family, so I'll click on default next to family and type in cabin. Select that option. And then we'll bump the font size up to 28, so I'll type 28 in the font size box. Alright, and then the next thing we're going to do is come down to the description, and we're just going to change the description color by clicking on the color box. And I'll scroll down, and I'll make it the dark gray from our color palette. Alright, so now we've got our first icon box created. The next thing I want to do is duplicate this icon box 3 more times so that we can have one underneath. So I'll click on duplicate, and that's going to make one underneath, and that's in this column. And then I want 2 more over here, so I'm just going to duplicate this column. So I'll click on the column and then click on the duplicate button. And then that's going to make another column. And then I'll just delete this other column by hovering over it and clicking on column and clicking on the red X and say delete. So I'm going to go back in and access each of these additional icon boxes by hovering over them and clicking on the pencil icon. And that's going to bring up the icon box settings. And I'm just going to change the icon, the title, and description. And I'll do that off camera for the sake of time. Alright, so now I've got my other icon boxes set up, and just so you know, if you want to use the same icons, I'm using the trophy icon, the eye, the paintbrush, and the puzzle piece. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the save button, and then let's view our front end, and we'll refresh the page, and we'll scroll down, and now you can see we have our new section created. The next thing we're going to do is add a new section underneath here, and it's going to have a video background, and then we'll have a heading, some text, and a clickable button. So let's go back to the back end, and we're going to scroll down and click on Add New Section. Then we're going to choose the one column option, and the first thing I want to do is add my video background. So I'm going to hover over the new section and then click on the Section tab. That's going to pull up my section settings here on the left, and then we'll switch to the Style tab. And this paintbrush icon is what we've used to add a background color and a background image to our sections. We're going to use the background video tab, so click on that. And then now all you have to do is copy and paste the URL to the video that you want to use and paste it right in this box here. So we're going to open up a new tab, and I've got the link to the YouTube video that we've used. So I'm going to copy that and come back and paste that in here. And all you would do is open up the video that you want to use for your section background, and you would copy the URL and come back and paste that in place. Now that's going to add your video background, and just so you know, if you have a short video, that video is going to loop repeatedly on the front end of your site, so it'll just keep playing over and over again. So the next thing I want to do is switch to the Layout tab, and next to height, it's at default by default. We're going to change that to min height, and that's going to make it 400 pixels tall by default. You can see our section is much taller. I'm going to make it a little taller by changing this to 500 pixels, and you can see that there. Also notice that the column position is set to middle, and I'm going to leave it that way. This is going to have our heading and our text and the button that we add in the middle of the section, which is what I want. So the next thing we're going to do is add our heading. So let's come up, and we're just going to duplicate this heading by hovering over it. Click on the duplicate icon, and then we'll click, hold, and drag the pencil icon, scroll down and drop this into the new section. And then I'm going to switch, or actually I'm going to hover over this heading, click on the pencil icon, and then we'll come over here on the left, and we're going to replace the title with Media Gallery. So I'll just type that in. And then we're going to switch to the Style tab, and we're going to click on the color box next to text color and make this white by selecting that, and then we'll click on the color box to minimize that. The next thing we're going to do is add text underneath our heading. So I'm going to click on the icon element, or the icon, or the elements icon rather, and that's going to pull up my elements, and then I'll click, hold, and drag the text editor underneath my heading, release that, and then I'm going to select the text that's there, delete it, and then copy and paste some text that I have. Paste that in, and then I'll switch to the Style tab, and first I'm going to center the text, and then I'm going to change the text color by clicking the color box, and I'm going to click on the white option. Alright, and then the next thing I want to do is add a clickable button, and I'm going to scroll up to the top here, and I'm going to duplicate this button here by hovering over it and clicking on the duplicate icon, and then I'll click, hold, and drag the pencil icon for the new button, and I'll release it underneath our text. And then I'm going to hover over the new button and click on the pencil icon to bring up the element settings. And first of all, for the text, I'm going to change this to View Media. And then for the link, I don't want this to link to the About page, which it is right now by default. I'm going to select that, delete it, and come back to the front end. And we're going to come up and open up our media page in a new tab. And then I'll just copy the URL for our media page. And we'll go back and paste that in. And then we're going to center this button, so I'll select that option, and then I'm going to remove the icon by clicking on the X here. And then I'll just click out to get out of that. And then the next thing I want to do is switch to the Style tab, and we'll scroll down. We're under the button settings. I'm going to scroll down and change the background color by clicking on the color box. And I'll scroll down and make this orange by selecting that. And just so you know, we'll leave the button hover if I click on that. We've got this grow animation by default. I'm going to leave that, and you can see that's in place there. So the last thing we need to do, if you notice, the text is a little bit difficult to read. So we're going to make our video background a little darker by using a background overlay. So we're going to hover over the section and click on the Section tab again. And that's going to pull up our section settings, and we'll switch to the Style tab. And of course, this is where we added our video background. I'm going to click on the background overlay option, and then I'll select the paintbrush icon, and then I'm going to change the color by clicking on the color box and select the dark option. And that's going to add the overlay, and then I'm going to bump the opacity up to 0.6. All right, that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and save the change. And then let's view the front end of our site and refresh the page. And then when we scroll down, notice that we have our new section in place with our video background and the clickable button to the media page. The next thing we're going to do is add a new section, and this is going to be a 2-column section underneath our video background section, and in each column we're going to have an image, a title, some text, and a button. So let's go back to the back end, and we're going to scroll down, and first we'll click on Add New Section. And then we'll choose the 2-column option. And then I'm going to add my images to the columns, but before we do that, I want to do something that I think is pretty neat. We're going to actually crop our images and give them a wider screen look, so they're going to look a little more cinematic. So to do this, we're going to go back, and I'll exit out of this tab. We're going to open up Pixlr again, so go to pixlr.com. And we'll scroll down and click on Launch Web App. And then we're going to click on Open Image from Computer. And I'm going to start with the image, one of the images that I added to my image gallery. And that's going to be the Nicaragua image. I'm going to open that. Click on Open. And then we're going to change the crop constraint. The crop tool should be selected by default there on the upper left, and of course it is. We're going to change the constraint here from no restriction to aspect ratio. And then we're going to change the width to 16. So I'll delete what's there and type in 16. And we're going to change the height to 9. And this is going to give us an HD type of aspect ratio to give us a widescreen look for our image. So when I do that, and then I'm going to make this a little bigger by click holding and dragging the corner there. Now when I use the crop tool by click holding and dragging in the upper left corner, and I'll just select all of that, that's going to select the aspect ratio so that for every 16 pixels I have in width, my height is 9 pixels. So I'm going to select that and press Enter to make the crop. And then I'm going to go to File, Save. And then I'm going to save this as Nicaragua widescreen. And click on OK. And I'll just save this to my desktop. Click on Save. And then I'm going to repeat the exact same procedure with the other image that I have, and I'll do that off camera for the sake of time. All right, now that I've got both of my images cropped, I'm going to go back to the back end. And of course, we've already added our 2-column section here. I'm going to click on the elements icon to pull up my elements. And first I'm going to find the image element. So I'll click, hold, and drag and release that in the first column. And then I'm going to click on this box here to choose my image. And then I'm going to click on Upload Files. Select Files, and I'm going to start with the Nicaragua widescreen image. I'll click that and click on Open. Then I'm going to click on Insert Media. And now we have our first image in place, and you can see that it's kind of got that wider screen look, which we really like. And now I'm going to change the image size to full, and I'm going to leave it centered. And then I don't want this image to be a clickable link, so I'm going to leave that to none. Now the next thing I want to do is add a heading underneath the image. So I'm going to come up and duplicate this heading. So I'll hover over it and click on the duplicate icon. And then I'll hover over the duplicate, click, hold, and drag the pencil icon, and come down and drop this in underneath this first image. And then of course I need to hover over the heading element, click on the pencil icon, and we need to start out by changing the font color so we can see it. Click on the Style tab, and then I'll click on the color box next to Text Color. And we're going to choose the dark color that we have. Now we can see the text. And let's switch back to the Content tab. And I'm going to change the title to Your Journey Starts Now. So I'll just type that in. And I don't want this to be a clickable link, so I'll leave that blank. And we'll leave it centered. And then the next thing I want to do is add some text underneath. So I'm going to go back to the elements by clicking on the element icon and find the text editor. I'm going to click, hold, and drag and drop that in underneath the heading. And we'll select the text that's there and delete it, and then I'll copy and paste some text that I have. Paste that in. Alright, and then we'll switch to the Style tab. And I do want to center this text, so I'll click that option. And also I want to change the text color by clicking the color box and make this text the gray that we have in our color palette. Alright, and then the next thing I'm going to do is add a clickable button that links to our contact page. So I'm going to duplicate the button that we have up here. I'll hover over it, click on the duplicate icon, and then click, hold, and drag, and we'll drop that in underneath here. Release that. And then I'm going to hover over the button, click on the pencil icon to access the button element settings. And first we're going to change the text to Contact Us. And I'm going to leave it centered, but I'm going to remove the link that's there. And we're going to open up the front end of our site and go back to the contact page by clicking on that in the menu. And I'll select the URL, copy it, come back and paste that in here under link. All right, and then the next thing I want to do is switch to the Style tab, and we're going to change the look of the button. First of all, I want the button to have a dark border and a white background and dark text. So we're going to start by coming up to the text color. We're going to click on the white and make that the dark. And then we'll click on the color to minimize that. And then we'll scroll down and make the background color by clicking on the color box. I'm going to make this the dark by selecting that. Actually, the background color is going to be white, so I'm going to select the white. And then we're going to click on the white color box to minimize that. And then we're going to add a border by where it says border type, and it says none. We're going to change that to solid. And then we're going to add 1 to the width by typing in 1 there. And actually, I'm going to make it a little thicker by typing in 2. I like that look a little better. And then for the border color, we're going to click on the color box. And we've already got it dark, but I'm just going to select that just to make sure that we have it the exact same color as our text. And then I'll click on the box there to minimize that. And now we're going to add our hover effect. First of all, I'm going to remove the animation, the grow animation. So click on the button hover option there. And we're going to click on the animation where it says grow and change that to none. But this is where we're going to change the background color to dark and the text color to white when we hover over it. So for the background color, I'll click on the color box and change that to the dark color from our color palette. And now when I hover over it, you can see we have that effect. And then I'll click on the color box to minimize that and change the text color by clicking that color box to white. And now when I hover over the button, we get this really cool hover effect. So this looks great. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this entire column and then replace the image, the title, the text, and the button text and button URL with the new text and the new image and all that we want. So I'm going to hover over the column, click on column, and click on the duplicate column button there. And that's going to duplicate the column within this section. And then I'll hover over this column, click on column, and click on the X, and then say delete. So I'm going to go back in and replace all of this, and I'll do that off camera. And all I'm going to do is hover over each component and click on the pencil icon and go through the exact same steps with our additional content. All right, so now I've got my additional content in place. And by the way, to replace the image, all you need to do is hover over it, click on the pencil icon, and then just click on the image box again, and that will allow you to upload a new image. And then let's go ahead and save the changes that we've made. Click on the Save button, and then we're going to view the front end of our site, and we'll refresh the page. All right, so now underneath our video background section, we now have our two column section. All right, the last thing we're going to do to our homepage is create a new section underneath here, and it's going to have a dark background, and then we'll have a couple of headings and then a couple of buttons side by side. So let's go back to the back end, and we're going to scroll down and click on Add New Section. And I'm going to start with a one column section. I'll click on that. And the reason for that is because I want my headings to span from one side of the section all the way to the other. And of course, they'll be contained within the boxed width, but they'll be all within one column. So we're going to scroll up to the top here, and we're going to duplicate this heading and then this heading. So I'll duplicate this one first by clicking on the duplicate icon. Then I'll click, hold, and drag the pencil and drop this into the new section. And then we'll do the same thing with the smaller heading by hovering over it, click on duplicate, and then click, hold, and drag the pencil icon and release it underneath this one. All right, and then I'm going to hover over this first heading and click on the pencil icon. And we're going to change the text by selecting what's there. And I'll delete it, and I'll copy and paste some text that I have here. Paste that in. And then we'll do the same thing with the Theodore Roosevelt heading. I'll hover over it, click the pencil icon to bring up that heading settings, select what's there, and we'll replace it with Benjamin Franklin. All right, and then the next thing I want to do is make this background dark, and our text is going to be white. So we can go ahead and change our text color to white, and I'm still accessing the smaller heading settings on the left. So I'm going to switch to the Style tab and just make the text color white by selecting that, choose the white option, and of course that'll disappear momentarily until we change the background color. Then I'm going to do the same with the top heading, click the pencil icon, switch to the Style tab, and we'll make it white. All right, and then I'm going to hover over the section and click on the Section tab to access the section settings, and I'll switch to the Style tab, and let's click on the paintbrush icon and click on the color box. And we're going to choose the dark option. And now, of course, we can see our text. And then one more thing, while we're accessing our section settings, let's click back on the Layout tab. And I'm going to change the height from default to min height. And I'm just going to leave it at 400 pixels. And of course, now we have more spacing above and below our headings, which I like. And of course, our column position is set to middle by default. We could change that to the top or bottom, but I want it to be in the middle. So we're going to leave it to that. And then the next thing I want to do is add 2 buttons underneath our headings here. And I want these 2 buttons to be next to each other, so we can't add them to the same one column. We would have to create a section within a section like we did a couple of times earlier when we worked on the first part of our front page. So the way you would do that is you would come back and click on your element icon, and you would use the columns element. But what we're going to do is save a step by scrolling up to the top. We're just going to duplicate these exact same buttons, and we're going to duplicate the entire section within the section, because these are the exact buttons that I want to appear in the section at the bottom of the page. So what we can do is just hover over any of the content within this section, because remember, we created a 2-column section here within the bigger overall section, and we want to duplicate this section here, the 2-column section. So we're going to hover over either one of these and click on the section tab, and then we're going to click on the duplicate section button, and that's going to make a duplicate copy of this entire section. And now we can click, hold, and drag the section tab all the way down and release it into our 1-column section underneath our headings, just like that. And since I want these buttons to be identical, and I want the links to be the same and the text to be the same, I'm just going to go ahead and save the change. And then we'll view the front end of our site and refresh the page. And now we have our final section created here at the bottom. Now, one thing I did notice when I'm looking at this, you can see that it looks a little crowded with this section that we have with 2 columns and our images. There's not a lot of space between the button and the next section, and there's not a lot of space up here between the video background and the images. So let's go back to the back end, and we're going to make an adjustment to this section by hovering over any of the content within the section, and then we're going to click on the section tab. And then we're going to change the height from default to min height. And then I'm going to bump this up to 630. So I'm going to type that in. And when I do that, you'll notice that now we have more space above and below. And the reason, of course, we have more space above and below is because our column position is set to the middle. So it's still going to align our content within the middle of the section. So let's go ahead and save this change. And then we'll view the front end, and we'll refresh the page. All right, I think that looks a lot better. That gives it a little bit of breathing room. So that concludes everything we're going to do to the front page. We've got all of our content in place, and we've got it all customized to be exactly the way that we want it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is adjust our site to look great on mobile devices. And actually, with the Elementor page builder and the GeneratePress theme, your site is going to look great right out of the box. It's going to be mobile friendly automatically. But you'll notice that there are a few things we can do to make it look even better. So I'm going to make our browser window a little bit smaller, or actually a lot of bit smaller, and this is going to simulate a mobile device. And you can see that we have this mobile menu automatically, and that looks great. And then we're going to come back to the front page, but I want to show you that the other pages we have already look nice right out of the box. The About page looks great. You can see that there. If we open up the Media page, you'll see we've got our photo gallery and the video. That looks nice. And then our contact page, you can see we've got the contact form and the other content we added and the Google map. That all looks very nice. So let's go back to the front page, the home page. And there are going to be a few things that we could change to make this look a little better. First of all, this heading is a little bit large. I'm going to make this a little smaller, and I think that'll look better. And then these buttons, I could center these buttons and make the buttons look nicer. This section looks great as it is, and this section looks great as well. But notice this section, we actually added a video background, and with the Elementor page builder, on mobile devices, video backgrounds aren't going to show up, so we need to add a background image to replace that video background for mobile devices, so we'll do that. And then also, we're going to center these buttons at the bottom. I think that'll look a lot nicer. So let's pull up our full screen browser window again, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll up to the top. And now let's go back to the back end, and of course we've got the Elementor page builder for the welcome page, the front page pulled up. I'm going to scroll up to the top of this page, and then to access our mobile settings, all we need to do is come over to the bottom left, click on this desktop icon, and click on the mobile option. and then I can click out of this to minimize that. And that's going to pull up the mobile preview mode, and now you can see what our site would look like in the preview mode. Now, one thing you will notice is that the video actually shows up in this preview mode, but just know that for mobile devices, the video is not actually going to show up. So let's go back to the top, and now that we're in the mobile preview mode, what we can do to adjust only the mobile settings for our different elements is hover over the element we want to adjust and click on the pencil icon. That's going to load our heading element settings on the left. And now notice that some of our options are going to have this blue icon selected. And this is the mobile icon. So this alignment setting, if we were to adjust it, it would only affect the mobile device setting. So if we switch to the Style tab, notice that we have several different options that have this mobile option selected. So right now for the size option, we're going to make our size a little bit smaller, and I can just use the slider here, or I can just type in a number, and I'm going to type in 64. And I think this looks much better. I think having a smaller heading there is going to look nicer for mobile devices. So I'm going to leave it like that, and this is only going to affect the mobile setting. So our desktop setting is going to look exactly as it does now. Now, another thing I want to do is scroll down and center our buttons, because if you recall, we actually aligned our buttons, this green one we aligned to the right, and the blue one we aligned to the left. So I'm going to hover over the green button, click on the pencil icon, and you can see that that's going to pull up the pencil element settings, and of course the alignment option has this mobile option selected. So we're going to align this to the center, so I'll set that, and then we'll do the same for the blue button. Hover over it, click on the pencil icon, and then we'll center it. Then we'll scroll down, and these two sections look great, and then we're going to adjust the video background section by hovering over it and clicking on the section tab, and go back to the style option, and then notice here the background fallback, and then we've got this message here that this cover image will replace the background video on mobile or tablet. So we're going to click on this box here to add an image, and I'm just going to use an image that we've already added to our media library. I'll just select this one here and click on Insert Media, and then I'm going to add a background overlay just to make this a little darker. So I've got this dark option selected, and then I'll leave the opacity set to 0.6, that'll be fine. So we'll see this change take effect when we save the change and view the site in our front end in just a minute. But let's go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, and we're going to hover over these two buttons and click on the pencil icon for each one. And we're going to adjust the alignment, the mobile alignment, so I'll center that. And then I'll center the blue button as well. All right, so now I'm going to click on Save to save these changes. And let's view the front end of our site and refresh the page. And now when we make our browser window smaller, you're going to notice that we have a few differences. Of course, we've got the smaller heading. Our buttons are now centered. You can see that. And then instead of having a video background, we've actually got this background image, and we've got the background overlay. That looks nice. And then also the buttons at the bottom here are centered. So that looks great. That's all we need to do to make our site mobile friendly, completely mobile friendly. And of course, to exit out of your mobile settings in the back end, we'd go back, and all you need to do is click on the mobile icon that's appearing now and switch it back to the desktop. And now we're back where we started. All right, we're getting very close to the end of the tutorial, but we do need to go over how to use the optional blogging features that are included with WordPress. So of course, a blog is an optional tool that you can use to communicate with your audience and organize your content in a way that makes it easy for your audience to browse through the different topics that interest them. It also is handy because it's going to show your most recent content at the top of your blog page, which makes it easy to get your newest content in front of your audience. So first of all, we already set up a blog, but we're going to review the process. And the way we did that, we created a page called blog, and I've got that here in the navigation menu. I'm going to click on that. And then we went back to the back end, and we're going to exit out of this and go to our dashboard. After we created that page called blog, which we did by going to pages, and we clicked on add new, and we just gave it a title, and then we just published it. That's all we did. And you could call it whatever you want to call it. And then to tell WordPress that we wanted that page to actually be our blog page, we went to Appearance and clicked on Customize. And then we clicked on the Static Front Page option here. And we told WordPress that we wanted our front page to be a static page because we didn't want our latest blog posts showing up on our front page. We wanted this welcome page that we've created to be our front page and show up when users type in our domain name. So we chose a static page. So we selected that option, and then we had these two options to work with at that point. And we clicked here and we chose the welcome page. All of our pages will show up here. We chose the welcome page to be our front page. And then since we wanted to have a blog page, and since we wanted to have a blog under posts page, we selected the blog page that we created right here to be our posts page. And then of course we saved the change. But let's go back to the front end of our site. So on our blog page, what's going to happen is the blog page, the page that you designate to show your latest posts, is going to show a sample of your most recent post. It's going to show an excerpt rather. So it's going to have the post title, which we have with this sample post included with WordPress. It's also going to show an excerpt here, and it's going to show a featured image if you have one. And then you can open that post page up by clicking on the title, and that's going to open up the individual blog post, and that's going to show the rest of the content. Now, in this case, we don't have hardly any content with the sample posts, but you'll see what an excerpt is in just a moment. And then also your users will have the option to comment on your blog posts if you choose to enable comments, and we'll be going over comment settings. So let's go back to the back end. And we're going to click on the blog page to open that up in the preview mode. And I do want to point out that a couple of things. First of all, we're going to go over widget areas, the sidebar widget area, and using these different widgets in just a moment. And also, it's worth noting that on the blog page, the page that you designate to show your latest blog posts, you won't be able to use the Elementor page builder. And this is just because WordPress is being told to only show your most recent blog posts on that page and do nothing more than that. So we're going to go back, and I'm going to exit out of this to go back to the main part of our back end. We're going to access all of our posts by going to Posts, click on All Posts. And then of course you can see that we have the Hello World sample post included with WordPress. We're going to hover over that and click on Trash. And that's going to move this to our trash folder here. It's not going to permanently delete it. We could delete it from the trash folder and we could restore it from the trash folder, but I'm just going to leave it there. And then to create our first blog post, we're going to go to Posts and click on Add New. And then just like we did with our pages, we're going to start out by putting in a title. So I'm going to click here and copy and paste a title that I have. And then for your individual blog posts, the one that we're working on now, you actually can use the Elementor page builder, and you would just use that just like we used it with our pages. Now it's your blog post page where you can't use the Elementor page builder, and that's the page that's showing all of your latest posts. But on these individual post pages you can, but we again are going to use the visual editor, and this is going to work much like a word processor and very similar to what we used with the text editor element within the Elementor page builder. So this kitchen sink icon, this toolbar toggle icon, you can click on that to pull up different options. And I'm just going to copy and paste some text in real quickly here. Press Enter. Okay, so now I've got some text added to my blog post. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how to add images within your blog post using the visual editor. First, you're going to click where you want the image. I want to put it at the upper left, and I want the text to wrap around the image. So I'm going to put my cursor there in the far left upper corner, and then I'm going to click on Add Media. And I'm just going to use an image that we've already added to our media library. I'm going to use this image right here, so I'll select it. Then I'll scroll down and we have several different options. First of all, the alignment, I want to leave that to the left because again, like I said, I want the text to wrap around the image and I want the image to be on the left side of the text. And then the link, I'm going to leave that to none, but you could use a custom URL if you wanted the image to be a clickable link. And then for the size, we're going to leave this to medium. The large and full option would be way too large, so the medium is a good choice. And then I'm just going to click on Insert into Post. And you can see that our image is added and the text is wrapping around it. Now, the next thing we're going to do is scroll down, and I want to point out that since we're not using the Elementor page builder, we're not going to adjust the sidebar layout, the page builder integration, or the disable elements at all. We're just going to leave those to the default options. But I do want to point out that we are going to use a featured image. So if your featured image is not showing up, you may need to come up to the top, click on Screen Options, and make sure Featured Image is checked there. And then that should pull up this option here. So we're going to set a featured image for our blog posts by clicking on Set Featured Image. And then I'm going to click on Upload Files and select Files. And I'm going to find these files on my computer in this folder. I've got them here in this blog images folder. And these images I actually got from another resource called pixabay.com, and it's very much like unsplash.com. You can use any of the images on their site for free, and you don't have to leave an attribution or get permission. So it's another great resource for you. And then I'm just going to open them. And by the way, I downloaded the images that were 1280 pixels in size, and you see that there. So I'm going to click on open. That's going to upload the image. And then I'm going to click on Set Featured Image. And that's going to add my featured image. Now, the next thing we're going to do with our blog posts, like I mentioned earlier, we can organize them into categories. And this makes it a lot easier for your users to browse through different topics. And we're going to go over the categories widget in just a moment. But first, we do need to organize our blog posts. So we're going to click on Add New Category. And I'm going to start out by typing in American. I'm going to turn my caps off. American presidents is going to be a category, and I'll click on Add New Category. And then you can actually use multiple categories. So I'm going to change this next one to historical figures and click on Add New Category. All right, so we've got this particular blog post in two different blog categories. The next thing we're going to do is publish the blog post by clicking on the Publish button here. So now that we've got our blog post published, we can go to the front end of our site. And of course, we're on this sample blog post that we just sent to our trash folder. So I'm going to click on the blog page to go back to our blog posts page. And now you can see we have our new blog post showing up. So we've got the blog post title, and then we've got the featured image that's actually automatically a clickable link because it links to the actual post page for this particular blog post. And also, by default, the Generate Press is set up to show the complete contents of your blog posts on your blog page. So you can see we have our image, the text that we added, and then we can click on the featured image or the title to be taken to this particular individual post page. And this is going to be the same thing, and it's also going to have this optional comment field. Now, one thing I want to do is go back to our settings and turn our blog setting to be to where it just shows the excerpt on the blog page, not the full contents like it is. So let's go back to our blog page. And of course, it's showing the full contents of the post. And then let's go back to the back end, and we're going to go to Appearance, Customize, and I'm going to do this in a new tab. And we're going to click on the blog option here. And you can see we have this one option, and by default, it's set to show full post on the blog post, but we want to change this to show excerpt. And when I save and publish this, and we go back to the front end, watch what happens to this content when I refresh the page. This is our blog page, and now it's only going to show the first several characters as an excerpt. And then, of course, we can click on Read More, or we can click on the featured image or the title to view the full contents of the post page there. So I really like this. Now let's go back to the blog, and I want to show you how to set a custom excerpt up. By default, it will just take the first several characters of whatever you type into your blog post. But let's go back to that blog post, and we're going to use a custom excerpt by first of all clicking on Screen Options, and we need to choose the excerpt option to make that available. Then we'll minimize that and scroll down. And now we have this custom excerpt here. So I'm just going to copy and paste one that I have. All right, and now when we come up and click on Update and view the front end of our site, we're on the blog page. When I refresh the page, watch what happens to the excerpt. It's now going to be the custom excerpt that I just put in. And of course, we can still click on the featured image or the title to be taken to view the full contents of that blog post. So we're going to go back and add two more blog posts. So we'll do that very quickly. We'll go back to the back end and we'll go to Posts, click on Add New. And then I'll give it a title. I'll copy and paste what I've got here. And then I'm just going to copy and paste some text in real quick. I'll do that off camera. All right, so now I've got my text in place. The next thing I'm going to do is add a featured image. So I'll scroll down and click on Set Featured Image, and we'll upload files, select files, and I'll find the Mark Twain image on my hard drive. Click on Open. Then we'll click on Set Featured Image. Then we'll scroll up, and I'm going to set a couple of categories. First of all, I'm going to check the box next to historical figures, and then I'm going to click on Add New Category and type in American authors and click on Add New Category. And then let's come up and click on Publish. All right, and we'll view the front end and go back to our blog page. And now you can see we've got our newest blog post showing up at the top here. And of course, if we scroll down, we've got our second post, the one that we published earlier, showing up below it. So we're going to add one more blog post by going back to the back end, go to Post, click on Add New, and I'll give it a title. And then I'll copy some text in real quick. I'll do that off camera. All right, now that we've got our text in place, we'll scroll down and click on Set Featured Image, Upload Files, select Files. I'll select the Benjamin Franklin image, click on Open. Then we'll click on Set Featured Image, and we'll scroll up and assign some categories. We're going to put this blog post in the American Authors and Historical Figures categories. And then we'll come up and click on Publish, and view the front end of our site, and we're on our blog page. And when I refresh, of course, that post is going to be showing up at the top, just like that. And all of the other posts are showing up below, and we can click on any of these titles or featured images to be taken to the full contents of each one of these blog posts. All right, the next thing we're going to do is discuss blog comment settings. And right now we're on the Benjamin Franklin blog post page that we created. And when I scroll down, you'll notice that we have this comment field. Now I'm going to open up this same blog post page in Safari where we're not logged in, and we're going to get a few more comment fields, and I want to show you that. So I'm going to open up Safari and just paste in this same URL. Then I'll scroll down, and this is what your users would see. They would be able to leave a comment. They would put their name, email, and their optional website in, and they would be able to post a comment. Now, by default, your blog posts will have comments enabled. And let's go back to the back end. And I want to show you where you can access your comment settings, because you don't have to enable comments. You can go to Settings and then click on Discussion, and I'm going to open this up in a new tab. And this is going to pull up your comment settings. Now, a couple of these that I want to draw your attention to. First of all, allow people to post comments on new articles is checked by default. And what this means is, as long as this is checked when you create your blog posts, then those blog posts will automatically have comments enabled. If we uncheck this and then scroll down and save the change, at that point, any new posts that we create won't have comments enabled by default. So we're going to leave this checked. But another important thing to notice is this message here. These settings can be overridden for individual articles. So if we go back to our blog post in the back end for the Benjamin Franklin blog post that we have here, if we wanted to turn comments off on this particular blog post, we could click on Screen Options and then make sure Discussion is checked, and then we'll minimize Screen Options, and then we could scroll down and we could turn off comments by unchecking Allow Comments. And then if we come up and update the blog post, and then view the front end of our site and refresh the page, we no longer have the option to leave comments, and that is only going to apply to this specific blog post. So that's one thing that you can do. And then another thing I want to point out, if we go back to the back end, we're going to go back to our discussion settings, again, by going to Settings, Discussion. Right here, the comment author must have a previously approved comment. This is going to be checked by default, and I definitely recommend keeping that checked, because what this is going to do is drastically cut back on the amount of spam comments that will be posted on your blog. So what's going to happen if someone fills out a comment and they're a legitimate person, the comment is not going to show up right away. It's going to show up when you log into the back end. You'll see a number here, just like we have the number 2 next to plugins. You'll see a number next to this comments tab, and you can click on that. And that would mean that you would have comments to either trash or approve. So you can manually approve them. And then once somebody has, if we go back to Settings and Discussion to pull that option back up, like it says, once somebody has a comment approved, then at that point, that person would be able to fill out their name and email address and leave a comment without having to wait for your approval. So this is just a good safety feature to make sure that spam comments aren't automatically appearing on your blog. So that's really all you need to know to get started working with comments. The last thing we're going to do is discuss widgets and widget areas. And widgets basically allow you to add additional features and functionality to your site, and we add widgets to widget areas. Now, different themes will come with different widget areas, but notice that we're on the individual blog post page for the Benjamin Franklin blog post, and I'll just scroll down to show you that. And we can see that we automatically have this right sidebar widget area, and it's populated with 6 widgets by default. And this is something that happens automatically with a new WordPress installation. But of course, we're going to have complete control over what widgets show up in our different widget areas. So just to give you a quick idea of what you can expect your widgets to do, the search widget would allow your users to search your site for a particular search term. The recent posts widget would show your latest blog posts, and if we scroll down, the categories widget is very handy because it's automatically going to add your blog categories to the widget, and your users could click on the blog categories and be taken to a page that lists all of the blog posts that fall into that category. So the American authors category, of course, when we set up our blog posts, we added the Benjamin Franklin and the Mark Twain blog posts to that category, and those are the 2 that show up when we access the American authors category. So you're probably asking, how do we know what widgets we have to work with, and how do we know what widget areas we have to work with? So obviously we have a right sidebar widget area. We can see that here. If we scroll down and look at our footer, you'll also see that our footer is divided into 3 different widget areas as well. So we know we at least have these 4 widget areas to work with. So to access our widgets and widget areas, let's go back to the back end, and we're going to hover over Appearance and click on Widgets. And you can see that on the left we have all of our available widgets to choose from, and then on the right we have all of our available widget areas. And if I click on the right sidebar widget area to minimize that, you can see more easily, you can see all of our available widget areas. So I want to draw your attention to the right sidebar and left sidebar. Notice that when I drop the right sidebar down again, you can see that it's populated with these 6 widgets by default. Now notice the order that they're in. If we look at the front end, and we're obviously accessing a page that has the right sidebar activated, notice that the same 6 widgets populate the right sidebar in the same exact order. So if we go back to the back end, to remove widgets from a widget area, all you have to do is click, hold, and drag and release them into the available widgets, or you can click on the widget and click on delete. So I'm just going to remove all of these, and I'm going to leave the meta widget for now, and that's going to save automatically. Now notice that when I refresh the front end, all we have showing up in the right sidebar widget area is the meta widget. So let's go back to the back end, and I'm going to remove the meta widget and add the widgets that I want to use. And I'm going to add a search widget by click, holding, and dragging. I'm going to add a recent posts widget by click, holding, and dragging and releasing that under the search widget. And then I'm going to add a blog categories widget by, and I just want to show you another way you can add that is by clicking on it, assigning it to a widget area, and then clicking on add widget. And that's going to add it automatically. And then all these widget options, the default options, are going to be just fine. So I'm going to click on each one to minimize those. And then I want to show you to rearrange your widgets. All you have to do is click, hold, and drag and release. So that's going to change the order there. And now when I view the front end, notice that I'm going to have those 3 widgets in that order showing up in my sidebar. So this is what I want to use. Now let's go back to our widgets, and your next question is, how do we activate certain widget areas? Well, first of all, if we drop down the left sidebar widget area and add a search widget to it and go back and view the front end, when I refresh the page, you're going to notice that we don't have anything change. Our left sidebar is not going to be activated, and it's not going to show that search widget that we added to it. So if we go back and minimize the left sidebar widget area, your right sidebar, your left sidebar, and all of your footer widget areas have to be activated. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute, but the header widget is the exception. To activate your header widget area rather, all you have to do is add a widget to it. So if we add a search widget to our header widget area and view the front end of our site, and this is of course our header, when I refresh the page, we're going to get this header widget showing up in our header. Now we've already got this search function in our navigation menu that we added earlier, so I'm going to go back, and I don't want to use any widget in my header widget area, so I'm just going to click, hold, and release that over here. So now that that's empty, that's going to do away with our header widget area, and that's what I want to keep it at. But just to reiterate, all of these additional widget areas, the right sidebar, left sidebar, and all of your footer widget areas have to be activated. So how do we activate those widget areas? Well, the first place we do that is by hovering over Appearance and clicking on Customize. Now, by default, this is going to load our welcome page in the preview. And because we have a page loaded in the preview, not our blog page and not a blog post page, but a regular page loaded in the preview, when I come over here on the left and click on Layout and then click on Sidebars, this is where we control the global default sidebar layout setting for all of our pages, just our regular pages. So notice that it's on Content Sidebar by default. If I click on this, we have several different options, and some of these, such as this one here, have a left sidebar option and then the content section, and then a right sidebar option. So this option would actually activate the left sidebar. But I'm going to leave it set to Content Sidebar like it was on. And you're probably wondering, why don't we have a right sidebar showing up on this page? Well, that's because we used the Elementor page builder for all of our pages. And if I go back to this new tab and go back to Pages, All Pages, I'm going to open up that welcome page. And just to remind you that when we set up all of our pages, we actually overwrote the default option for our sidebar layout by selecting the Content No Sidebars option. Now, if we wouldn't have done this, and of course we had to save that change by clicking on Update, if we wouldn't have done that and just left it to the default option, it would actually have a content section, and then it would have that right sidebar widget area showing up. So for all of your pages, you control your sidebar layout option right here, and then you can override that setting on your individual pages by selecting a different option here. Now let's go back to this section, and I'm going to open up the blog page, and this is the page that we specified to show our latest blog posts. This option is going to bring up the blog sidebar layout because we're viewing the blog in the preview and we're on that sidebar layout setting here. Now I'm going to go back just to remind you, all we did, we opened up the blog page and just went to Layout and Sidebars. And because we're on the blog page, that's going to show the blog sidebar layout. So notice that it's set to Content/Sidebar, and that's exactly what we have. We have the content area on the left, and then we have a right sidebar area on the right. Now, this is the only place that you can control the blog sidebar layout. You can't open up the blog page and override this setting. It's only controlled from this section. I just wanted to point that out. But notice that we chose a different option. If we activated the left sidebar area by selecting that option here, notice that we're now going to see that search widget that we added to our left sidebar, and that's because we have activated the left sidebar area. Now, personally, I prefer just to use one sidebar widget area. I think it looks a lot better, but that's how you would activate a different sidebar widget area. So I'm going to stick with the content and right sidebar option, so I'll just leave it at that. Now the last thing, the last sidebar area that you would want to control would be for your individual blog posts. Now I'm going to go and just open up my individual Benjamin Franklin blog post by clicking on it. Now I've got that open in the preview. And now we have the single post sidebar layout setting. It changed, so it's only affecting the single blog post layout. So of course you could change that to a different option, but again, I want all of my blog pages or blog related pages to show a content and a sidebar. So I'm going to leave it set to that. But if I wanted to override the individual blog post sidebar layout for a particular blog post, I could go back to the back end, go to Posts, All Posts, and I could open up any of the blog posts and override that default setting the same way we did with pages by scrolling down and under sidebar layout. Let's say for this Benjamin Franklin blog post, I didn't want to have any sidebars. I could choose that option and then update the page. And now when we refresh the front end, and actually I need to click on that blog post to open that page, that post page up, and now you can see this blog post page doesn't have a sidebar at all. And that's because we overwrote the default option from here, but I'm going to change that back to the global layout settings so that it will pick up that content and right sidebar default. And when I refresh the page, we're going to revert back, of course, to the global setting that we have. And the last thing I want to point out is that if we go back to our blog, of course, we accessed our blog layout settings by opening up the blog in our preview here, and we have the blog sidebar layout now. Whatever you have this set to, it's also going to affect your categories pages, and if you were using an archives widget, it would affect that those archive pages as well. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, the very last thing we're going to do is set up our footer widget area. So let's scroll back down to the bottom, and just as a review, you can see that we have 3 different footer widget areas activated by default. So let's go back to the back end, and first we're going to hover over Appearance and click on Widgets. And then of course you can see that we have up to 5 footer widgets available. So to activate your footer widget areas, we're going to open up in a new tab. We're going to go back to Appearance and click on Customize to be taken back to our theme options. And we're going to click on Layout here, and then we're going to click on Footer. And then I'm going to scroll down in our preview mode so we can see our footer. And then notice the options that you have to work with. First of all, the footer widgets is set to 3 by default, of course, and you can see that that is the case. You can change this and have up to 5 different options, as we know. And you can see that if you activated that and saved the change here, then all 5 of your footer widget areas would be activated. But we're going to keep things very simple. We're just going to use one footer widget area, so I'm going to change that to 1. And we're going to save and publish. And then I do want to point out before we go back that you can use this back to top button. If you enable that, that's going to add this button to your footer right here, and your users could click on that and it would take them back to the top of the page. So that's just a neat feature that you might want to consider using. I'm going to leave that disabled. And of course we've already saved our change, so let's go back to our widget area. And I'm just going to keep things very, very simple with a text widget. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag a text widget in place and release that into footer widget 1. And I'm just going to type in the copyright symbol. And the way you do that is hold Shift and type the 7 key on your keyboard, and that's going to be the and symbol. And then type the word copy without any spacing and semicolon. And then I'm just going to say learn to create a website. And then period. And then let's click on Save to save that widget. And now when we view the front end of our site, and of course we're on the footer widget area section, and refresh the page, now you can see we have the text widget that we set up in the one footer widget area that we activated. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations for making it through the entire tutorial. If you've made it this far, you've definitely learned a ton about how to create a highly customizable website with WordPress. And I so appreciate you choosing to watch this particular tutorial. And if you did find it helpful, please take a moment to say thanks by liking the video on YouTube, subscribing to my channel, adding the video as a favorite, and also please be sure to leave a comment and let me know that way if the video was helpful. You can do that right underneath this video on YouTube. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to look at those as well. And lastly, if you do need a hosting provider, please consider using my affiliate link and my coupon codes to make your purchase. That helps me out a great deal. And it also enables me to continue making these in-depth tutorials for you. So again, thank you so much for all of your support. And as always, I wish you the best of luck with your online endeavors. Take care.